Good morning and welcome to the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting for May 15th, 2018. Madam Clerk.
Item 1 on the closed session agenda, Public Employee Performance Evaluation, Government Code Section 54957B1, title Public Works Director.
Any public comments on this item?
Yes, there are public comments on this item. As you know, I rely on Public Works to place signs, to fix roads, to do anything that might concern me, that I might come across. And Jeff Krovitz has been an excellent Public Works Director. Even though you might not think so, when I've needed signs, they've been there within 2 weeks up on the road. So he's a very kind man, a very busy man. I understand he doesn't have the staff that he needs, but you can't just keep bringing him forth for performance evaluation. Handle it as project evaluations and bring him forth that way, because it looks really bad when you do that. If he does have future employment, they're going to look at that. They're going to see all these public performance evaluations. So just be kind to the man. Even if you have to one day get rid of him, be kind to the man.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Item 2, Conference with Legal Counsel, Anticipated Litigation, Significant Exposure to Litigation, one case pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2.
Any public comments on this item?
Yeah, closed session item. So we don't know what it's going to be. Neither do you, because she does it. She brings them to you at the last minute. So eventually, I'm going to sue the county. I mean, we're just getting to that point. I just need to. I mean, it's like a bank account. Every so often, you make mistakes, and those mistakes have to do with the treatment of me, a minority. So when it's going to happen, and I'm specifically going to go for punitive damages because that's what hurts people. That's what hurts people. I can't take punitive damages against any elected official, but your appointed officials, yes, I can. So when I came back, I specifically told your county council to make sure that people left me alone before even starting working on the things I needed to work on. I know how these people are up here. We've had problems with this before. It goes back to Steve Walensky and some of the things that he did, some of the placements of or not doing, preventing the staff from doing things because he always wanted me to go to him. Well, I don't have time to go to an egomaniac. I just don't have that kind of luxury. So we're heading in that direction. Well, it's going to happen. Don't worry. I don't like to do it. I'd rather just get it over privately. But as you know, as my significant other said, who, by the way, just got her PhD on Saturday, she says, I have more swagger than Mick Jagger, and I'll use it. So let's get it moving. Okay, I have a boat to take care of. I have to put the CF numbers on it, and if you guys need me, I'll be on the bay tomorrow. My phone's on. I'll be sure to watch a little bit of the video tonight and have a great meeting. It's good to see all of you. Take care.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, we will go into closed session. Good morning. Welcome to the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting for May 15th, 2018. If we all can, will you please rise for the pledge? Supervisor Garamendi, can you please lead us?
Yes, thank you. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on, Madam Clerk.
Report of closed session. Item 1, Public Employee Performance Evaluation, Government Code Section 54957B1, Title, Public Works Director. The board received a notice of resignation and an intent to retire dated May 14, 2018, and on a motion by Supervisor Garamendi and a second by Supervisor Mills, a unanimous vote of the board accepted the resignation of the Director of Public Works effective June 5, 2018. Item 2, Conference with Legal Counsel, Anticipated Litigation, Significant Exposure to Litigation, 1 case, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. There was no reportable action taken.
Madam Clerk, announcements.
Announcements. This is a time for board members and county staff to provide updates of upcoming county events that may be of interest to the public.
Are there any board announcements?
Got one. We have a fair coming up, and there will be a parade 10 o'clock on Thursday morning. So if you'd like to come to Angels Camp and enjoy a parade, here's your opportunity to do it. And I know that Economic Development, Kathy, you're going to have a booth out at the fair, and I know that there's a number of us who have agreed to man the booth with you. And so we look forward to anyone who is attending the fair. Stop by the booth. Might be an opportunity to talk to some people that you don't normally talk to. So appreciate the time to put that together.
Supervisor Garamendi.
I want to echo what Supervisor Mills said. Fair time is upon us. Everybody show up, have a good time. And I encourage all my fellow supervisors to attend the livestock auction on Sunday. Lots of fun kids that we can support and help out in our community. And they work real hard. And you guys have all seen them with the roosters crowing in here. So let's get out and help them out as best we can.
I might want to note, I'm also a judge for livestock. I used to be on a farm when I was growing up, so I do understand that
As
one.
long as you're not a caller at the auction.
No,
we'll be
I'm not
all
going
right.
to call. Absolutely not. And we wish the best of luck to our chair when he jumps his frog.
Sunday at 3 o'clock.
We're all rooting for you, Gary.
Yeah, 3 o'clock.
You know,
I'll
bring the winner.
I'll bring the
Pride
lead
home.
shot. I'll bring the lead shot if we get some distraction going, okay?
Okay, all right. All right, is there any other board announcements? No? Staff announcements?
I have one, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So I'd like to announce that at last week's Government Center Frog Jump, the employees of the county raised $990 that was donated to the Calaveras Humane Society and Friends of Calaveras Animal Services. Our winners of the Frog Jump, first place was Mark Kirkendall of the Information Technologies Department. Second place was Anai Artega from Health and Human Services. And third place went to Supervisor Garamendi.
And I asked to use that frog, but he gave that frog away to a young lady.
Little Hazel Turner. She really, really wanted it.
So, any other staff announcements? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Public comment. Any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard.
So, I will open up to public comments. Anybody from the public have comments that anything that is not on our agenda?
Good morning. Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. I bring good news. You probably heard about the bum rack that the egg had, that eggs were bad for you because it contained cholesterol. And if you ate eggs, you're going to have a shorter lifespan. It turned out, even though this was popular and widely believed as being true, it turned out to be a myth. the egg got a bum rap. Well, this same thing seems to be happening with carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide, otherwise known as CO2. CO2 happens to be not a poison, but a nutrient. It's a nutrient for plants. Plants are good. We eat plants. I have here mint. This is a unique mint because I grow more of it than I could possibly eat. So I figured out a way I could get rid of some of this mint and also use it as a prop that'll be remembered about the good that CO2 does. CO2 is a nutrient. It's good for you. It's good for the plants. Now, there was drilling of in the Arctic for going back many, many years in the past to see just what the relationship between CO2 and global warming was. There is a relationship. Al Gore showed it on a chart with the two lines separated, saying, can anybody doubt there's a relationship between CO2 and global warming? Well, it sure looked like it, but it was a phony chart. When you put the two lines together, CO2 followed global warming. CO2 followed global warming. CO2 did not cause global warming. It followed global warming. Cause and effect. I don't think you can repeal the law of cause and effect, at least not right now. So, knowing that carbon dioxide increases after global warming, we understand it better. We also understand that it comes from the oceans because by increasing the temperature of the ocean, we also release carbon dioxide. That's where it comes from. It doesn't come from the capitalists. It doesn't come from burning oil or anything like that. So we have a little packet for each of you. This mint, that it's good with fruit. When you eat this mint, you remember that CO2 is good.
Thank you, Al.
Miss Susan.
Any other public comments?
Good morning. My name is George Fry. At the last board meeting, I didn't get an opportunity to address an issue that I passed out to all the board members. The issue is CLAP is trying to censor talk. I'm a Vietnam-era veteran. I served my country for the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, as well as all the rest of the amendments. And I'm just totally disgusted with Clyde Clapp. This is a letter that was written by Candy Strube of Rancho Calaveras. Supervisor Clyde Clapp is apparently trying to censor topics he doesn't agree with addressed excuse me, during public comment. You can see the letter from Clyde Clapp to the editor in the Valley Springs News dated April 10th. On October 17, 2017, at the end of the Board of Supervisors meeting, he yelled, "Sign the recall," referring to the petition for recalling Jack Garamendi. Now he is trying to censor the public, who are encouraging voters to sign recall petitions for Dennis Mills and Gary Tofanelli. It's obvious the reason is because he sides with their stance on cannabis. So it's okay when you do it, but the public can't. As Jack Garamendi so eloquently stated at that same meeting, it is the public's constitutional right to be heard. In the same letter, his concern is continued. Misuse of taxpayer facilities and employees' time for a platform to promote personal political agendas. That is exactly what he did on October 17, 2017. He was on the job in a county facility being paid by the taxpayers and promoted his political agenda. I find his double standard very disturbing. I find it very disturbing. We have two veterans on this board, Jack Garamendi and Michael Oliveira, and I can't help but believe that they find it disturbing as well. Like I said, I was a combat army infantry soldier, and I fought for the freedoms that we all have. I'm disappointed, totally disappointed in Mr. Clapp's attitude. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, I'll close public comments and we'll move on. Madam Clerk?
There we go. Mr. Chair, could I interrupt for a moment?
Sure.
I failed to announce this during announcements, but I'd like the opportunity. Today is National Law Enforcement Day, and I would request that our flag be flown at half-mast outside the courthouse here. It's being celebrated in Washington, D.C., celebrated in Sacramento, and all throughout the nation, states. So I would make that request. Thank you, sir.
It's already at half mast.
Thank you.
That was quick. Good job.
I'm just that good.
I think we had a discussion earlier. So. All right, Madam Clerk.
Item 4 is from the Office of Emergency Services to receive an update on disaster recovery activity throughout Calaveras County for Butte Fire 2015, tree mortality 2015, and winter storms 2017.
Good morning, Michelle Patterson, Director of the Office of Emergency Services. I'm going to transition over to this desk for this presentation today. We're going to do it a little different than
Almost as big as a budget. These packets you left up there for public. So if anybody from the public would like one of these.
Okay, so first of all, what I would like to do is formally introduce to you Jeremy Denbo. He's our new Emergency Services and Disaster Recovery Coordinator and has been critical to the work we've done in the past few weeks, and I'm really excited to have him on board. So if he'll stand and say hello.
Pleased to be with you all.
Welcome.
All right. Short and sweet, yes.
To the point.
Thank you. Okay,
Jeremy.
so we're going to do today's update, disaster recovery update, a little bit differently. What I wanted to do is really bring everybody onto the same page about where we are as far as disaster recovery efforts are concerned and provide information to you in a way that going forward we can update in a very recognizable format. So that's what we're going to do today. And then at the end of the presentation, we're going to turn our focus towards preparedness. And I have the pleasure of having one of my colleagues from the National Weather Service here to give us a little bit, she will be here, she's in the parking lot, a bit of an update on what we're looking at for summer and fire season this year. So with that. So the Office of Emergency Services within the last week has taken over the project management for Butte Fire and winter storm recovery efforts. This has been made possible by bringing Jeremy on board. He's got extensive experience with recovery operations and has been critical to the past couple of weeks in my office. This will allow us to bring project management back in-house and have more control over the process going forward. So we're going to do this in this order. We're going to talk about Butte Fire first. We're going to go into winter storms, And then we're going to discuss tree mortality. I do have folks here for the various topics, including Tad and Mel, to talk about some of these things. So over the past 2 weeks, Jeremy has done significant analysis. He's been in contact with various state and federal agencies to get a thorough understanding of what we need to do to be successful in completing these projects. So with that, we've put together, this is a little not clear on the board. We put together these matrix for each of the disasters that basically illustrates what we have and what we need, and at the end we'll summarize how it is that we're going to get there. So we're going to start with Butte Fire, the tree removal projects. As of yesterday, we were still waiting for FEMA to approve the request to include the phase 2 trees that did not end up surviving after the Butte Fire. We referred to these in prior meetings as the green trees, so there's about 1,500 of these trees that need to come down, and so we are still waiting for FEMA to approve that request. Cal OES did recommend that it get approved, so we're just waiting for that official word from FEMA. Also, you'll notice that in the details column, we have the total project cost, what the federal share was, what the CDAA or the Cal OES portion of that cost share was, and what our county match was. For this project, at the time, there was a very sort of quirky thing that occurred where for this particular project, the tree removal project, we don't have a county match for that. So this one is unique in that matter, and that was a decision made by, I believe, the Cal OES director at that time. So we're still waiting on that to go forward. We do have sort of a process that we're going through to amend the contracts so that we are ready when that approval comes. The next one that you'll see here is the public assistance roads for PW 88. These are the Butte Fire roads. Roads come in 2 types. There's public assistance roads and there's federal highway roads. So we're going to talk about those separately. As you'll see, what we have here is the FEMA designated total cost for the project, what the federal share was, what the CDAA share was, and what the county share is anticipated to be. In the status column, you'll see where we are as far as environmental and other permitting processes that need to be done and that we've already started. So you'll see that we are categorically excluded from any NEPA requirements. We filed our CEQA notice of exemption, and we're within our 35-day waiting period for that. So we anticipate by early next month to be cleared on CEQA. AECOM is a biologist that FEMA hired that assessed these 95 sites that are included in this project and has cleared the sites for biological issues. The State Historic Preservation Organization has also got concurrence that we don't have any requirements as far as that is concerned, and you may have heard them referred to as SHPO, so we don't have any requirements for that. And we believe that we may be able to complete these projects with force account labor, which means in-house labor, but we may need to do some equipment rentals in order to provide the right equipment to get the job done. So like I said, there's 2 different types of roads. There's public assistance roads and there's federal highway roads. I realize that the details of the graphic on kind of in the middle is hard to see, but I'll explain to you what you're looking at, and then if you choose, I have clearer copies in my office. So basically what this is all of the roads that were federal highway roads that were identified as damaged during the Butte Fire. The color coding on this stands for the way that FHWA handled this disaster at the time, which was either committing 100% participation, which actually equates to about 84% participation financially, or 50%, which is a little bit actually a little bit less than 50%, or have 0 participation. So you'll see very clearly, based on just the colors of this, that we have about 1/3 of these roads that don't have participation from a federal agency, which means that CDAA or Calaveras won't cost share on those roads. So this is a bit of a challenge because it will take then county policy and the board decision to then prioritize how we address these roads going forward.
Do you have a total cost for those in red?
I did not calculate it up, but I can definitely get that to you.
2.8 million, Supervisor Gurman said.
All right, 2.8 million. So this FHWA process was a bit new to myself and to Jeremy, and so we spent the Monday and Friday getting a clear understanding of what we need to do to move forward on these, and we've been in touch with Caltrans, and it appears that we have sort of similar requirements that we do with FEMA as far as environmental permitting and clean waters and all of that stuff, but we anticipate that that will go quickly once we start working our way through that process.
Michelle, got a question. Did PG&E submit the report on their vehicles?
I'm sorry.
Did PG&E submit the report on their vehicles?
I don't know.
They were required to. I know Manny was working on getting that from them.
Okay.
It had to do with the weights of the vehicles, what roads they were traveling, and that was going to be built into the cost structure of repairing some of these roads, that PG&E was going to be partially responsible.
Okay, I'll have to look into that because
Okay,
I
just
wasn't aware
make a
of
note.
that.
Thank you.
Okay, so we do need, in our office, we need a little bit more time to kind of dig into the FHWA stuff, but at our first whack at it, we feel that it's going to be a similar process, and we're going to be able to do these things in parallel so that we're not having to wait to move on one before we do another, as far as the process is concerned. The remaining project for the project worksheets for the Butte Fire is the debris and ash removal project. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Mel Knight, who's been working on the insurance recovery piece, and he'll provide you a quick update on that status.
Mel Knight, Butte Wildfire Community Liaison. And by the way, I appreciate very much the management being provided by the newly established team there at OES, County OES, and especially I mourn the loss to my immediate work environment of Jeremy Denbo, but he'll be a great addition to the team. Anyway, so it's been very helpful. The timing is good, though, that as you well know, we're in the midst of closure of this project. I'm limiting my comments to strictly the structural debris insurance cost recovery. We've been very successful. We're under budget. We're going to be closing things out. We're about 85% at clean closure for all the properties, which is a fairly high number. Collected more than $7 million. This, again, I'll remind, was a massive project with more than $100 million expended, £500 million of potentially hazardous debris removed over a 10-month period by hundreds of engaged contractors and staff. So it's one that next month I'll be providing probably a pretty comprehensive overview, if you'd like to see that, where we'll go over some of those things as we're doing, I think, a successful, for lack of a better term, mission accomplished closure of the project. That's all I was planning to report today, unless you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So we do have two projects that just were approved within the last 6 weeks from FEMA. These were the FMAG and Hazard Mitigation Project grant proposals that were submitted at the time of the fire. And these projects were approved for watershed restoration. We need a little bit more time to understand sort of what the full breadth of the project was and what sort of the requirements are to complete those projects. So we do need a little bit more time to dig into that. But as you'll see, there's a total cost of almost $4.5 million set aside for watershed restoration from these projects. So we'll need to just dig into that a little bit more and provide an update at a later meeting for that.
It's interesting, talking to the head of the U.S. Forest Service yesterday, that it has come out that trying to restore a watershed immediately after the fire is the worst thing that could be done. That we wait 2 to 3 years,
and you have a better ultimate effect in silt and sedimentation movement into your reservoirs and streams. It's just kind of an interesting point that maybe there was some good that came out of the delay.
Perhaps. Thank you for that. All right, so we're going to turn our attention now to the winter storms. And again, this is going to pan out as far as roads are concerned. There's still the two different types of roads, the public assistance roads and the FHWA roads. And what you'll see here is based on our analysis over the past several weeks of what we need to have these projects completed. So we're just going to start with, we'll go through these, and if you have questions on any particular one, we can address those at that time. The Blagan Bridge project is categorically exempt from NEPA and will have CEQA in process by this week. FEMA has approved a hazard mitigation plan for that, and so basically we just need to start putting those components together, perhaps with using in-house staff or by RFP. But yes.
Ms. Patterson, that's great news. When can we expect shovel in the ground to start on that project, in your best estimate?
Best estimate, we're hoping by middle to late summer on these. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Sure. The next one is Gwen Mine Road. This one is actually, you'll see that the total project cost is pretty low. It's only about $56,000. That's because the project worksheet by FEMA was written for this, for engineering studies at the 4 sites that were compromised. This project is a complex project, and so what FEMA is asking that we do is develop engineering studies, turn those in, and they will write the plan as well as a hazard mitigation plan for those sites. So basically what we would like to do is explore the opportunity to use force account or in-house staff to write those engineering studies and turn those back into FEMA as quickly as possible so that we can get the hazard mitigation plan for that written and we can implement the fix for that project. You'll see that we're working right now with U.S. Army Corps of Engineers on our Clean Water Act compliance documentation. GIS over at IT has been, super helpful as far as getting the information that we need to turn into the Clean Water Act, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So we'll be submitting that within the next day or two to get that cleared. Biological review has been cleared by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and they've determined that there's no effect at this site. This work is complex on this site, and we'll likely need to RFP out the actual construction work that needs to be completed, but all of the other pieces we believe we can complete in-house. Murphy's Drive Culvert Crossing. Again, we've got NEPA categorical exclusion on this one. We have our CEQA documentation in process. Jeremy's working with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers on our Clean Water Act compliance documentation. Again, this site has been cleared by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for biological effect, and they've determined that there is no effect to biological issues that may be out there. For this one, we do need to submit a hydrology and hydraulics report in order for FEMA to provide us the hazard mitigation plan. So this site will not be replaced in kind. It will be better than it was before. But we do need to submit that hydrology report to them so that they can tell us the recipe for putting the hazard mitigation in place.
Ms. Patterson, again, thank you. I notice the value of this project has been diminished from what the previous estimates were. Are these just the funds required for engineering and design work, or is there going to be more, or is this the actual cost?
So once we are able to get the documentation that FEMA needs to them for completing the writing of the plan and providing the hazard mitigation plan to us, we'll likely see that the total project costs will increase.
Okay.
And it won't be what we've referred to recently as a reversion request. It will simply be an amendment or an edit to the documentation, so the process shouldn't be very long. to get that done.
Okay, so we really haven't decided on the design yet. It's still in the process, correct?
It's still in the process pending this hydrology and hydraulics report, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Again, we're looking to do that hydrology and hydraulics report using in-house staff, and if we're unable to, if we don't have an engineer in-house that can write a hydraulics and hydrology report, we may need to RFP that out, but it will be RFP'd in a very sort of isolated way. We'll do an RFP for hydraulics for this disaster alone, and that will help to ensure that we've got a good competitive bid process for that particular piece of work. So we're hoping to get that done very quickly. The next one is Pennsylvania Gulch, and as you'll see again, we're categorically excluded from NEPA on this one. Our CEQA will be in process within the next couple of days. Jeremy, again, is working with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers on clean waters issues. FEMA has reviewed this site for biological effects and determined that there are none. FEMA has approved a hazard mitigation plan for this site, but we need to provide a hydraulics and hydrology report to sort of just confirm that that hazard mitigation plan is appropriate. So again, you're sort of starting to see a pattern here of the things that we've cleared and the things that we need, and as long as we can get FEMA the reports and the documentation, they'll turn around to us and provide us what we need to move forward on these projects. But again, this is a project that has hazard mitigation included. We just need to submit that report to them. And again, we are exploring the ability to use force account for the hydro report and the road work. So we believe that we can get that done quickly as well. Canyon View Drive is a bit of a complicated project, and it was further complicated by the storm that occurred this past March. But with this one, we do still have a NEPA categorical exclusion for this one. CEQA is in process. We do need an engineering study on this one. This was a complicated site with landslides and things like that. So we do need to get that developed in order for FEMA to confirm the hazard mitigation plan that had been developed. So they did draft a hazard mitigation plan for this site, but they would like us to go out there, do the engineering study, and confirm that that hazard mitigation plan is sufficient to repair that site. Again, we also need a hydrology and hydraulics report for this site, so we'll be able to hopefully get that done with force account and turn those in to complete our HAZMAT studies. And we need to do an RFP for the construction on this project just because it is a very complex project and we need additional people to come in and do that project for us for the construction piece. Hover Road, again, NEPA, this one is statutorily exempt, so there's two different types of exemptions, categorical and statutory. So this one is statutorily excluded from NEPA. CEQA, again, in process. Again, Jeremy's working with U.S. Army Corps of Engineers on our clean water stuff. Again, FEMA has reviewed this site and there's no biological effects that they observed at this site. We do need an engineering study and a hydraulics report in order to finish getting the paperwork back from FEMA, but we believe that we will be able to utilize force account to complete the hydrology study and the road work at this site. So the last of the public assistance roads is the CSA 4 project. Again, you know, you're starting to see a pattern with this. We are categorically excluded from NEPA on this. CEQA is in process. Clean Water Act's stuff is in process. But FEMA reviewed this for biologicals. There's no effect on any biological things out there. FEMA has approved a hazard mitigation plan for this site. We do need an engineering study and a hydraulics report so that FEMA can confirm that the hazard mitigation plan is sufficient for this site. And we are exploring the opportunity to use force account for this work.
You might not be the one to answer the question, but it says the county share of $5,364. Would that be something that would be billable to the CSA? or is it strictly a county share?
You know, I don't think I'm able to answer that question.
It would be, since the CSA funds in there would be analogous to general funds in there, that you definitely could use those CSA funds to meet this county match requirement.
Yeah, I just wanted to be sure we got it out there so I could have that discussion.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so there were federal highway roads that were impacted by the winter storms. This one, federal highways, did a little differently from disaster to disaster. Sort of the requirements and the process and the procedure and the way things occur at various federal agencies change a little bit, and you may have heard perhaps Rebecca talking about that at other times, where just the requirements and what's necessary changes. So these weren't categorized in ways like the 100%, 50%, or 0% that the Butte Fire roads were. The good news on this one too is we're still, we haven't needed to request an extension on these ones yet from FHWA, which is a stricter process than it is for requesting extensions from FEMA. Again, we do need a little bit more time to review the FHWA process, but anticipate that we'll have to do sort of the parallel track of the NEPA and the CEQA and the CWA and the biological, but we don't anticipate there being a lot of holdup with those processes. So we'll be able to provide a more thorough update on these particular projects at the next disaster recovery update. So this is a significant change than where we were at a few weeks ago and into last month. So how are we going to get this done? As much as we can, we'd like to utilize force account in-house staff to do some of this work as far as the engineering and the hydrology and the engineering studies are concerned. We are doing, in my office, Jeremy is leading the way on doing the environmental permitting process, and it's going very smoothly so far. We've had really good, successful contact with all the various agencies involved, so that's going really well. Road work, there's some projects that I highlighted during the presentation that they're complicated, and so we should RFP those ones out for construction companies to come in and complete for us, but others we believe that we can do in-house. We may need to do some equipment rentals if we don't have the proper equipment to complete a project, and again, that's one of the things that we'll have to assess going forward as we continue in this process, because right now I don't know what the equipment needs might be, but they're probably there. Archaeological and biological monitoring, even though we are throughout the presentation, I've illustrated that we're, NEPA exempt and CEQA is in process, and that, various agencies have decided there's no issues out there. We still do need to do this in a prudent way, and so we are required to have archaeological and biological monitoring. So those will need to be done via RFP. And in order to assist in managing the workload, the RFPs, the contracts, the budgets, the reporting piece, we would like to hire a limited term administrative analyst in my office to take on some of that administrative burden. And it's likely that we're going to need to hire some limited term road maintenance workers to spend all of 100% of their focus on these disaster projects. That will ensure that we're in compliance with the requirements for this. So that's how we're going to get this done. We feel very confident that this will go a lot quicker than we had first anticipated it going. So far things are going really well in light of Jeremy's onboarding in my office, so I'm very grateful for that. This is just, we've talked about the reversion process a lot and what that might look like and what that means, and so I just wanted to kind of put it out on paper or on the screen here to kind of show you what that reversion process is. What we believe is that many of the things that we initially thought we were going to need reversions for, which basically means we're drastically changing the scope of the project. We probably don't need many of those at all at this point. We may need to request extensions for some of these projects, but based on the information that we give to FEMA, like the hydrology reports, the engineering reports, those will just be like edits. So it won't be this elongated reversion process. But I wanted to be sure that you had a better understanding of what this process, what we meant when we said reversion request. So that's that one. Do you have any questions before we turn our attention to the next disaster project? Okay, with that, I'm actually going to ask Tad Mason with TSS. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah.
Ms. Patterson, I want to commend you on the job you've done. You've been with us a few short weeks, and this information is very helpful, especially to folks that have been looking for these repairs for a long time. The process is an educational process. Unfortunately, we don't set the standards. We do have to abide by what the federal and state guidelines are. And once again, you've done an excellent job.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You should be appreciated. Thank you.
My pleasure. Okay, Tad, you're up.
Great, thank you. Morning, Tad Mason, Forester TSS Consultants. We're the project coordinator for the tree mortality program. And basically what we have here, the first slide up is the summary of our projects that are in process right now. The first project up is Project 1A. This was our pilot project. Basically a little over 50 trees involved. During our conference call this morning with our foresters, it became clear that, as we all know in this room, tree mortality is very dynamic. We've had some additional trees basically die on the parcels we're working on at Pine Brook, so our project will be completed later on this week. That was a total of 57 trees at Pine Brook and spread out over about 31 parcels. So that's 1A. Project 2, and this was a ramped up project, much larger scale, over 330 trees, basically at Blue Lake Springs and Flying Acres. Per the CAO's request, we ramped this up to a scale that's a little more economical, going to 330. It's spread out over 163 parcels, and the bids came in last Friday, and I believe the contractor's been selected. Yeah. Right. So it's Nate's Tree Service, based out of Sonora, and that project will likely start middle of next week. Nate's Tree Service was also the contractor of choice for Project 1A. So it's nice that we have local area contractors involved. It's a very comprehensive process. We had 9 bids come in last Friday, so we're able to engage a lot of contractors in the process, and I think get a very cost-effective set of bids coming back in. That's Project 2. Any questions?
Was there a cost on that contract?
A little under $200 per tree.
Total bid was $55,700.
Yeah, quite competitive. So, Project 3, it is proceeding. We have the tree list and the map and the scope of work. Off to contracting, I think the invitation to bid on Project 3 will come up later on this week. So we're quickly getting the projects out. The idea here is the tree mortality has been going on for so long. Our concern is these trees are starting to fall apart. And with that, safety of the workers becomes a concern. So we're expediting quickly. We've taken on additional staff at TSS to do the work. So things are progressing. Project 4 is Big Trees Village. Right now we have over 400 right of entries out there, of which 273 have been returned, which is pretty good. We're hoping to have the invitation to bid set up in the next 4 to 6 weeks. Other projects in play, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are going to take into account Sky High Ranch, Meadowmont, Lakemont, White Pines, hopefully this summer. Okay. Now, if we can go to the next slide. This is a map of the county. It was put together by Mike Miller and his team, a map that you no doubt have seen before. The reason I put this up here is just to let you know we are concentrating in the southeastern part of the county, in the area in green. We'll be wrapping that up this summer, at which point we're going to move to the north, up into that more brownish shaded area, West Point, Wilseyville country, and that will be our focus late summer. So from there, we expect to move to the west area. You can see that in the purple, and then down to the blue. So this progression basically is put together based on our field assessment of where the hazards are and where we should be concentrating our time. Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, can I go back to our previous slide for a question?
Of course.
What is the most difficult roadblock you face when trying to get these right of entry forms back? I noticed that we're getting 50, 60% of them back. Does that hold up production?
It does. It does, Supervisor. We have a fairly comprehensive outreach and communications plan that involves the tree mortality website. It involves a banner that we've put up over the highway in Arnold, and we also have yard signs that are starting to go up in Blue Lake Springs, actually in the yards that we're moving trees from. So we've also made presentations to fire state councils and fire-wise meetings, as you know, May 5th. And those have gone pretty well. To get 60 to 75% return is pretty good. Of course, we'd like 100%. For Pine Brook, Project 1A, it was 100%. So that's our target. The challenge in many of these subdivisions is that these are people that don't live here full time, and so we have to chase them down wherever the homeowners actually live.
What happens if you don't get a return of entry?
A right of entry?
A right of entry form.
Then we don't address that parcel. Because obviously...
Then what happens with that parcel?
Well,
I'm trying to help you out here.
No. Supervisor, I appreciate that. This is a good line of questions. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, there isn't much we can do without a right of entry. So it falls back on the parcel owner and their liability involved with that tree. So if it falls and connects with the road and it's a county road, then the county has that option of going after that parcel owner.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're aware of the process.
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
And then this is an example of a project area. This is project number 2. I mentioned 330 trees, 163 parcels. This is obviously south of Highway 4, and it's focused on Blue Lake Springs and Flying Acres. So just an example of a project area. That map, by the way, was put together by the IT GIS team right here in the King County. Great team to work with.
Incredible asset.
Yes. And that's what I have to offer today.
Any additional questions for TSS?
I have one. Going back to the map, you have the one area that there's no tree count done yet. Do you know when that will be?
Right, great question. These tree counts were provided by Mike Miller and team, and they stopped mid-process and did not complete that tree count. So these are counts based on 2 years ago, and we don't consider them to be accurate. Just a heads up.
Is there in the movement to finish that tree count in that area and maybe update in the other areas you haven't got to yet?
Well, we can tell you that county-wide, our rough estimate is 10,000 trees. Yeah. As far as how they're allocated across these different regions, because of the dynamics of PG&E being so active protecting their corridors, the tree counts are not that helpful. Okay. So it's just, we're prioritizing based on what we can see from our countywide survey, and you know, those tree counts are just not accurate.
Thank you.
If I could add one thing, Mr. Chair. I think that, as we look at that, the west area, the pink piece of this, or the purple up there, it's in the Butte, most of that's in the Butte fire scar.
Right.
And so we've got green trees, white trees, we got all kinds of trees dying up there. And I think we kind of got to sort through
Yeah.
what is,
Fire and what is
It's a moving target.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I appreciate, you guys know the dirt, you know where you're at.
Thanks, Ted. I just wanted to touch a moment on the financing for this project. So this is a state-declared only disaster. So they pick up 75% of the cost of this. The reimbursement process for this is very easy. Working with Calaveras on this is very easy, and we've been able to maintain the cash flow of this project. We also did get a grant from CAL FIRE for our county match up to $679,000. So once we hit that cap, then unless additional funding comes through via some other source, at that point, then we would have a county match to participate in. But right now, we have good financing on this
And
project.
what is the percentage for county cap?
So
County match.
the state is 75% and the county is 25% in this scenario.
And I was going to add in reviewing the governor's May revise that came out. At this point, they have continued the funding for it. The state's in a good cash position. Last year, we were having a different conversation where there was risks that they might reduce that funding. So I'm feeling confident that we'll continue to retain both the funding to remove the trees, but also the 25% match that's been allocated to CAL FIRE at this point.
So
Supervisor Oliveira?
So just for clarity, at the Fire Safe meeting in Arnold, the statement was made that the county is being 100% totally reimbursed for this removal of trees. Is that accurate?
in theory, so once we meet if we get to $679,000 on the CAL FIRE reimbursement piece, and we still continue to have costs, that's when the county would have to start chipping in on the 25% unless there's additional funding that becomes available at that time. I think when I was with Rebecca, we did the estimate, and I think it's about $2.7 million. This would be what we would have to spend to cap that $679,000. So we're still in good shape, and so as long as the state is able to continue funding the tree mortality project, and we stay within our $679,000 until other monies become available, we are 100%.
And I just ran that again, and it is 2.7.
Thank you.
Okay. Just want to make sure we're clear.
Additionally, the California Air Resources Board is now tossing some money into the pool as well.
Yes.
And we just need to be aware to take advantage of those funds when they come up, and maybe that can become part of our matching piece, because they also said that this is a form of fuel reduction.
Yes.
So it could go several directions for us, and we just need to be able to know that CARB is thinking, instead of spending money on tailpipe emissions, let's spend money on reducing wildfires, which kind of negates the whole idea of tailpipe emissions. It's a kind of a quantum shift for them to think that way, but it's going to provide some additional funding. They said up to $2 billion that might become available here, so that's a big chunk of money that we might be able to use.
Right. And as you heard at the April 24th meeting, there are other initiatives for forest health ongoing, and they will address fuel reduction as well. So
I'll report on some of that at the end.
wonderful. Okay. Thanks, Ted. Okay, at this time, I'd like to shift our attention from disaster recovery to a preparedness angle and invite Michelle Mead from the National Weather Service to come and present on the summer outlook and fire outlook for the season. So if you want to come over here so you can drive the presentation.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me. I met Tim a couple weeks ago at the Mutual Aid Coordination Group. and Michelle and Tim asked that I come and present to you guys. For those of you who are looking at me wondering which television station I'm on, I'm not. I am a federal employee. I do work for the federal government. The National Weather Service has the mission of protection in life and property, and we do that through the means of watches, warnings, and advisories for weather, but we also give you your day-to-day weather forecast and then do a lot of community outreach. So, without further ado, we're going to actually take a look back before we look forward. We do want to keep in mind our winter. Of course, 2 years ago we had storms that never stopped, which you guys are still talking about today with mitigation from those storms. So everyone was prepping this year for a repeat of that. As a meteorologist, I can tell you all bets are off when it comes to California. There is no normal. We are definitely the redheaded stepchild when it comes to normals in the weather world. We are just a long, skinny state, and it's hard to apply one particular atmospheric anomaly, say El Nino, La Nina, to what our winter is going to be. That is no exception from last year. So we had a La Nina, if you remember, and everyone said, okay, Northern Cal is going to be really wet, and Southern Cal is going to be really dry. Mother Nature liked to play with us, so she decided she would turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off. What you're looking at here is the Central Sierra San Joaquin Index. This is 5 weather stations that Department of Water Resources monitors every winter, and they use this to determine the amount of water that's going to be available to recharge the reservoirs. So you can see that we literally had an on-again, off-again winter. April Fool's us and bucked that trend and was at or above average. And the Southern Sierra is the 6th station, or Tulare Basin. Your guys' county is kind of on that edge between Central and Southern Sierra, so that's why I wanted to share both. So water is one piece of the equation, and the shaded blue area you're looking at is the quote-unquote normal. And the Department of Water Resources does not measure water in a calendar year. They do it in what is called the water year. And what that accounts is October 1st through September 30th. And the reason they pick those months is it's the max accumulation of snowfall and accumulation, and then the snow melt and runoff into our reservoirs. And that's what they constitute the water year in California. Okay? So what you're looking at here, the shaded blue area starts from October 1st of 2017 and will go to September 30th of 2018. So the Central Sierra did not do very badly. We're at 78% of normal. That's that blue line that you see there. And the Southern Sierra, a little less at 65%. Now I mentioned water and snowfall, so we need to take a look at the snowpack. We did have a combination of warm and cold storms. Typically, April 1st is the max snowpack because that's seasonally when we go from our cold storms to our warm storms. At April 1st, we were about 50% of average for the state. So those are the numbers that the Department of Water Resources and the Army Corps use to figure out the water supply for your coming summer, what's going to recharge the reservoirs. To this date, at the end of the month, we are already down to 20 and 30%. What that means is the snowpack acts as another reservoir in the mountains. And we use that snow melt to recharge the reservoirs as they're ramping up for the fish, also for water supply and for agriculture. So as they're letting out, they're expecting that snowpack to recharge the reservoirs. Because we're already down to 20% and we're only in the middle part of May, that means our snowpack will likely be gone about a month earlier than typically happens. Last year we had snowmelt all the way to the end of July. This year we're looking at snowmelt ending by June, early June. Reservoirs, again, thank you to 2016-2017 water year. We had an abundance. The reservoirs were above historical averages. That continued through this winter. The red line there is what they call historical average. So like I mentioned, the reservoirs aren't going to be all the way full. They start increasing that level after May 1st when the rainy season starts to end and our dry season starts and the snowmelt begins. So we were at or above historical averages. The caveat to that, of course, is Oroville. We had that little incident last year. They did have to drain it quite a bit for the work that they did. In early April, I'm not sure if you saw that, but there was a notice that was sent out that they might actually be using the repaired spillway due to that April storm we had. Their level for use was 800 feet, and the rain that came in got it to 799.5. So they were really lucky. You're welcome, because I totally planned that. I'm kidding. I don't control it, I swear. So that was a good thing. And now what we're going to turn to is those numbers are going to increase every day until we hit June 1st, which is typically when we dry out. In California, we don't see any more precipitation for June, July, and August. And that's when the reservoir can actually reach max capacity, and that's due to the snow melt. What about Calaveras County itself? This is the water year to date. What you're looking at here is the average, and you can see Calaveras County itself did quite well, 80 to 105% of average. The higher numbers, of course, are in the foothills and the higher terrain, because we get that from, because you are what we call an orographically favored county. You're not completely flat. As the storms go up the mountain, they actually squeeze out a little more moisture. So your foothills and mountains did get up on that higher end. So last year, we pretty much obliterated the drought in central and northern California. Our friends in southern Cal, unfortunately, still had some drought conditions at the end of last year. All of the rains that we got in 2016, 2017, we did end up having 34 atmospheric rivers that hit the state. The average is 5 to 7, but a majority of those hit Northern California. So that's why we had all the flooding and everything. And our friends in Southern Cal, thanks to our federal water project and state water project, of course, we were able to move that water to Southern Cal, but their groundwater situation, of course, they're high desert, but is even worse than that. They really don't have any groundwater reserves, hence the drought conditions that you saw at the beginning of October 1st. Here we are this year. That on-again, off-again precipitation that we had actually did expand some drought conditions. The yellow that you're seeing there is considered below average. So basically what happens is the storms were coming in off the west, they would hit the coastal range. And what happens, everybody just lee or this side of the coastal range, they got shadowed, meaning they didn't receive their maximum amount of precipitation. So that's why they are in that below 70% or below average precipitation category. And also that's what the drought monitor authors are looking at. Now, us as the Weather Service, we participate in these calls monthly, and we are always looking for drought information that the counties are dealing with, so we can relay that to the drought monitor authors. Their tree mortality is something that they're very well aware of. We're always giving them updates on that, and just yesterday I talked to them about the fuel status, how the fine fuels or the grasses this winter actually was good and bad. The on-again, off-again actually allowed a bumper grass crop to develop, but because of the on-again, off-again precipitation, it's already had 3 curing periods. So things that were growing in December and January are already cured, and the stuff that was growing in May is already in that brown-up process. So if you're not aware, they consider those ladder fuels, and we have plenty of it this year, just like we did last year. So again, it's something to be concerned of for the fire outlook. So everyone is familiar with this. This is the California and Forest Service tree mortality website. If you're not familiar with it, it's very easy. Just Google California tree mortality and you get this very nice graphic. What it does here is it really highlights what was already shown on the previous presentation about your areas of concern. The other thing I think a lot of folks don't realize is the tree mortality, because of the 5-year drought process, didn't stop when the rain came. It's a continuation of the process. Not only did they die from the drought, but it made an environment for beetles to come in and beetle kill. So according to the Forest Service reps that I've talked to, trees can die 3 to 5 years after a drought from the initial drought. So these are, as of 2017 and 2018 aerials, and I believe they plan to do them again this year, so you'll see those updated numbers, whether they're from windshield or these aerial surveys. So Calaveras County, you are definitely on the edge of the extreme tree mortality, and it's the nicest thing about this web page is you can zoom in and you can turn on the different layers, like your main thoroughfares, power lines, things of that nature. So it would help definitely in your deciding where to get rid of the parcels next. So, like I mentioned, California is the redheaded stepchild when it comes to climatology and weather. We are entering our dry season, so these are the seasonal outlooks that are put out by the Climate Prediction Center. If you see color on the map, the brown indicates probability of at or below average precipitation, and if it's green, that's the image on the left, sorry, it's the probability of at or above precipitation, and this is over a 3-month period, so we're looking at May, June, July. The image on your right is for temperatures, and it is indicating the probability of at or above average temperatures. And typically they look at 30-year averages, but because the last 10 years have been so warm, they're actually putting more weight into the last 10 years. So as we move forward in these slides, you're going to see a lot of red over California, which shouldn't be a shock to anybody. I moved here 5 years ago, and every year I keep hearing it's never been this hot. It's never been this hot. So I'm a Minnesota girl, born and raised, so this was kind of a shock for me. So anyway, this is May, June, July. What you're really going to see from this is, because we're entering our dry season, you'll see no color over California, and I like to say get out your dartboard, because that's equal chances of below average precipitation, average, and above average. But keep in mind, in June and July, our average precipitation is less than 1/10 of an inch. So it basically means dry conditions. But it's the red on the temperature that I really want to draw your attention to. So as we are starting to heat up, you know, it's a thing a lot of folks tend to, we're used to this, we've lived here our whole lives, but there's more and more folks out there that are being impacted by the heat. So this is the fire outlook. This is put together by South Ops, which is in Riverside County. This is a team of meteorologists, fire behaviorists, and fire managers. What they do is they take a look at the tree mortality, the seasonal outlooks, and our past winter. How much precipitation fell, what's our water supply going to be, and what are our fine fuels doing. So you can see as we get into June and July, what this basically means is we all know fires happen in our summer and fall months, but this is the potential for those fires to become out of control, and mostly due to the fine fuels, the temperature, and the wind. Weather Service monitors the winds and the relative humidity, because those are 2 of the 3 factors that determine fire potential. And then the other piece of that equation is fuel. So that's where we work very closely with the Forest Service, so they're letting us know. From 3 weeks ago when I was here, your green hills have already turned golden. So it didn't take long, and we've actually been cool in this May. So that's how quickly we can dry out here in California. That's the reason we're called the Golden State. So basically keep in mind, if you have the ability to take down those open fields full of grasses, take advantage of it. CAL FIRE just had their Wildfire Awareness Week last week. They had a lot of defensible space, one less spark, one less fire. Those are things that we at the Weather Service share, and I encourage all counties to share those as well, really showing that united front and continual communication of all entities. That way we get our residents to actually take action. Speaking of heat, the Weather Service for many, many years would issue extreme heat warnings, but they were based on heat index. And for those of you who are not familiar with heat index, it's a combination of temperatures and relative humidity. Well, 40% relative humidity in California, and people are like, oh my God, it's so humid. I grew up in Minnesota. 80% humidity is where people are starting to have problems. So the heat index really wasn't applicable to California. So about 5 years ago, 2013, everyone remember? People dropping over in late May, early June, because we had 95 and 100-degree heat. Cal OES is like, this isn't working for us. You guys aren't issuing products like you should. So we did a combination, or we started a project with Cal OES and California Heat community, basically the medical community, and combined research, and decided that it's actually more the temperature and the seasonality that has a bigger impact on people than the heat index. So what we've done is we've created a product called the experimental heat risk, because we're the federal government. It's 5 years. We're only halfway through the process. We are using it operationally, but until it goes nationwide, it is called experimental. But this is available on our website. The nice thing about this is it's color coded. It's real easy. If you're familiar with AQI, it's pretty much the same color scheme. When you're getting in those orange, reds, and purples, it means there's going to be a lot of intense heat around. You're going to want to start taking precautions and messaging not only from the Weather Service, but from your community as well. Our criteria for issuing products now, instead of a one number fits all at one point, we're going to use this color scheme. And the nice thing about it is it's geographical. You can actually see where in your county is going to be the most impacted versus the one point at San Andreas being applied to the whole county. So when it's red or magenta, you will see some kind of heat product, whether it be an advisory or a warning. The difference between the advisory or the warning would be the duration. If you're seeing purple, it means we're looking at a long duration event, 2 days or more. If you're seeing red for a couple of days, it means you're getting recovery at night, because that's actually what we found through the research is if the body and even the electrical structure doesn't get below, the air temperature doesn't get below 75, the body can't recover, and neither can the electronic or the electric circuit, because everyone keeps their air conditioner going if it doesn't drop below 75. So that's where they're finding the accumulative effort of that 75. And it's actually because it's seasonality, it goes on your location. So if you guys are used to getting into the 50s at night, your threshold might be 60. So that's the nice thing about it, is it's really carbon or created for your area versus a one-size-fits-all number. And the nice thing about this, like I said, is you guys as community leaders, you can access this. It goes out to 7 days. It's right off our website. It's easy to understand. Like I said, it's very similar to the AQI. If you know you have an outdoor event coming over the weekend and we're seeing reds or oranges, you know, you can plan. You can tell folks, hey, don't forget to bring a hat for shade or an umbrella, or we're going to have extra shade or water centers out there for folks of that nature. So it's available at weather.gov/Sacramento, and it's right under our forecast experimental heat risk. The nice thing about it is you can zoom in, you can bookmark it, you can have it just for Calaveras County, pull it up every day. You can click right on your spot, and instead of going through each day, it will pull up the 7-day forecast for you with the color code across the top, so you know which day is one you need to look out for without having to scroll through each day. So it is a nice feature. So there's other great things on our website, weather.gov/Sacramento. This is a great way for you guys to know about what's coming. The image I have here is of our main homepage. The top image there is something we call a weather story, and it's basically your guys' quick look to see what's going to happen in the next 7 days. We issue these because as much as I love to talk science and geeky meteorology, you guys just want to know, what does it mean to me? And am I going to be impacted in the next 7 days? So quite a few years ago, we transitioned to more of a graphical way to communicate. We do this mostly on our webpage, but also through our partner emails. And it's a great way for you guys to get a real quick look about what's the impact over the next 7 days. We try to take all the science out of it and just make it real simple. Let you know it's going to be cooler than average, warmer than average, rainy, snowy. You guys do have to deal with snow here in Calaveras, so I know when I say snow at other places, like, it doesn't snow here. But I do come from the mountains. But and we also are very active on social media. Michelle told me that she's got a new OES site, and we followed it that same day, and vice versa. So that's another nice thing is we're message emphasizers. And that's what my final slide, that was me bringing up the web page. You didn't want me to do that? But this is today's weather forecast, and I'll show you quickly where the experimental heat risk is. And then I'll get out of it just to show you. But the nice feature about this is that there's layers. Welcome to the GIS world. And you turn on your counties, and you can zoom in. Oop, trying to do this one-handed. And you can click wherever your outdoor event is going to be, and this is that color code table right at the top. So it basically tells you what that's going to be in the next 7 days. So it's a nice feature. And my final slide here is my little plug. So about 6 years ago, Napa did a review of federal government, right? And Weather Service got an A+ when it came to warning and reactive, right? We really are good at giving you the warnings for the tornadoes and the flash floods. But we didn't do so well on our preparedness because we made all these assumptions, right? Everybody knows what a warning is. Everybody knows who the Weather Service is. So they decided to come up with a program to really embrace this whole community effort, and we started something called the Weather Ready Nation ambassador program. So basically what it means is we are partnering together to keep all of the residents we serve safe. And how we do that is our office puts out a local partner email. Michelle is on it. I know she shares it with counties, folks who are going to be impacted by weather events. You guys might have seen those in the past. But in addition to that, our national folks will send you out information about national programs. Like we had hurricane awareness. It's hard to believe, but May 1st is hurricane awareness. We added the cold water awareness on that. Unfortunately, we've already had a couple folks die this spring due to the quick warm-ups we had and the snow melt coming down the mountains, so we still have cold rivers. So things of that nature are things that we bring your attention to. And again, it's that community approach, because social science has told us what we should do and what we do. So when you hear a fire alarm, what should you do? Come on, guys, really? Get out of the house. What do most people do? Nope, they look. Is Michelle moving? Oh, well, she's not moving. I'm not going to move. Nobody wants to be that first person. They look for that second source of verification. So if I'm putting out a warning as the National Weather Service, and then Michelle, as the county, says, hey, Calaveras County, look out, we're going to see a big storm with some flooding. Now we have two sources. Say Mark Finan gets on the news and says, hey, another storm's coming. Now we have three sources. And it could just be your Facebook feed. And one of your neighbors says, oh, well, Jack said it's going to be rainy. I think I'll do something. It's that simple. It's just that communicated, simple message, but it's the same message with multiple sources. So that's really what this Weather Ready Nation initiative is. I have applications here for anyone who would like to sign up. Like I said, you will get our partner email, and then about 4 or 5 times a year you'll get the national ones just letting you know about the awareness weeks. But ours are more local to your guys' area and what you need to know for your area. So please feel free. If you don't have time to fill this out today, I can send Michelle a fillable PDF that you can email back to me, and we can sign you up that way. But I'm really here to just expose you to the Weather Service, who we are, what we do, let you know about how we partner with not only the counties but CAL FIRE, and we're all here to serve the same people, and you guys have it all. You have flood, fire, snow, you name it. So we're here to help.
Any questions?
Any questions for Michelle?
Just want to thank you for, National Weather Service. I mean, we've all listened to you guys our entire life, so thank you for what you do and giving us the keeping our property and life safe.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me, Tim.
So I've had the pleasure of working with Michelle for years, and I'm really grateful that she's here and we get to keep working together in my new capacity. So thank you.
Thank you for your time, Michelle. Thank you.
So I know it's been a long presentation today. I hope you found everything that was shared useful, and going forward, this will be kind of more the format, so you'll be able to see sort of that continuing progress on each of the projects in the same format each time, which will hopefully make it easier for everyone to track. So with that, are there any closing questions for
I
me?
have to open up for public comment.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Watch.
Supervisor Garamendi, your light's on.
Oh, I just wanted to make a comment. Michelle, I want to let you know that I appreciate the work that you and Jeremy did on this. I appreciate the time that you spent over the last week walking me through a lot of these projects and bringing clarity. I think you're a real no BS leader. You say the way it is, and I appreciate that. You give us the facts and tell us what you can do. I also appreciate the pace and scale that you're taking on this project. When I asked for timelines, you weren't giving me quarters or years, you were saying days. And I really appreciate that. Thank you for all your work, and Jeremy, thank you. And thanks to our federal partners as well that are working with us.
My pleasure.
And
Thank
state
you.
partners.
Yes, thank you.
Supervisor Mills?
Yeah, I'm looking at this as a dawn of a new day, and something that probably was long overdue going back to 2015. And being able to pull this together, I would trust that you will work with the CAO and providing the additional staff that you're going to need to accomplish some of these goals, because I know that you're not going to do it all by yourself. So just appreciate the expertise that both you and Jeremy have brought to the table here at a critical time in our county. And I'm sure we'll work it through, but we got the right people here at the right time.
We have a really good, strong team, and I'm very grateful for that. So thank you.
At this time, I'll open up for public comment. Is there any public comments on this item or questions?
Al Scala Taxpayer Association. There's an incredible presentation. I have two questions. One, what is the cost of undergrounding the overhead power lines? Is it cost prohibitive, or is that something that can be planned for the future to reduce the chances of fire being caused from that source? And the second question is, it's probably an easy one. It seems like our weather forecasts are really accurate when it's close, like a few days, maybe up to a week or so. But after that, it doesn't seem to be quite so accurate. And I wonder if there's been any sort of statistics on that to how far you can go where you can trust it. And beyond that, you can't count on the results. So two questions.
So the first one was the cost of undergrounding power lines. I don't personally know that information, but perhaps.
Actually, it's interesting. We had a conversation, a meeting with PG&E probably 3 weeks ago, and I don't know if Michelle was able to make that meeting. I think she was in Sacramento. And actually, we broached that question as, obviously they're doing all these replacements. Would it be easier? And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the cost was roughly like 5 times to be able to put them underground. What PG&E is doing, though, is looking at ways that, and this is across the state in fire risk areas, ways that they can maybe re-engineer some of the existing lines. One of the things that they're doing, and I didn't realize this, is that most of those lines aren't coated. And so what happens is when it falls on the other line, that's where it's causing the reactions. Well, they're now looking at instead doing coated lines that even if they end up touching, it greatly reduces the risk that you're going to have sparks or contacts. It also provides better strength if a tree falls on it, that the line doesn't necessarily have to go down. They also were exploring areas of where right now, and I can't remember the term, I'm sure Supervisor Mills knows what the term is, but there's a term when the power goes out, there are these auto restarters that essentially try to force power back on. That's been blamed for potentially now causing a fire that wasn't there before, because now it's trying to put power back to that line. They're looking more and more at disabling those. The good news is it reduces fire risk. Bad news is it means if you have a power outage and you lose it for, 5-10 minutes, now you could lose it for 3-4 hours until PG&E clears it and makes sure that everything is okay.
And as it pertains to the second question regarding weather forecasts, I'd like to invite Michelle back up to the podium to perhaps answer that question.
The $1 million question.
We all want to know.
Yes.
So, trust me, I get asked that all the time. So, the weather models have gotten quite good, honestly, in the last 10 years, most notably in the last 5 years. So, our forecasts out to 10 days are very, very accurate. Like you mentioned, the short term out to 3 days is about 80% accurate. And then when we get the 3 to 7 days, we're looking at about 70% accuracy. 80 to 100% in the first 3 days, 70% in the 3 to 5 day, 50% 7 to 10 day, and beyond that, butterfly theory, you name it. So when I put up those images from the Climate Prediction Center, they've had success in many parts of the country with those seasonal outlooks, except for California. And I bring this up all the time, and I'm like, you guys, you put all these images out, and it shows California getting lambasted with rain, which they showed this year. So everyone was gearing up for last year's rain, and we had an average winter. So in California, we always say winter season is flood season. I don't care what you hear about El Nino, La Nina. You should just always be prepared for flooding in California in the wintertime. And in the summers, actually year-round now, always be prepared for fire. We just are, unfortunately, because we're such a long, skinny state, you can't take one atmospheric anomaly and apply it to the whole state. And I think people forget that. We know where we live. We live in Central California, so we are literally in that zone of below or above average based on whatever ENSO signal is going on. So we do our best. And I bring those up because people ask for them, but I always say don't put any weight into them. But there is quite a bit of research going on, and there's a lot of talk in the climate community about improving seasonal and subseasonal forecasts, especially for states like California that have entirely managed water systems. Because if we don't know what the winter's going to bring, we don't know how to do our reservoirs. And that's from the state perspective. I don't do water. I just predict what's coming out of the sky. Does that help? Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you, Michelle.
Michelle, to your point, being a pilot, we depend upon your weather forecasting, as you know, in real time. And you are updating those sometimes hourly. So even before we land, we've got to have current weather information at different flight levels, et cetera. And I know the pilots really strongly depend upon the accuracy of your data as we transition from various flight levels. So thank you for the work that you do there, because as you know, you could move 4,000 or 5,000 feet and make a substantial difference in your temperature and your icing conditions, et cetera.
Yeah, and Western U.S. compared to the rest of the U.S.,
different world.
Completely different ballgame.
Right.
So,
thank you.
you're welcome.
Public service announcement here is that PG&E will be repainting the transmission towers in Calaveras County this summer because of the lead-based paint that's on towers. So don't let your kids be chewing on the towers. But yeah, don't climb them because there is lead-based paint there. But they are going to be covering those or recoating them all. So if you're seeing helicopters running around and people working on the towers, that's what it's all about. It will be in the Copperopolis area all the way up through and to Murphy's. Just be aware.
And across the county.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, well, with that closing of no other public comments, we'll close this item. And thank you, Michelle, very much for your presentation.
Absolutely.
And we will be taking a 15-minute break at this time. Madam Clerk.
It's like,
All right, Madam Clerk, item number 4.
Item 4 is from the Planning Department to conduct a public hearing and adopt a resolution upholding the Planning Commission's denial of the appeal of the Planning Director's refusal to accept a late submittal by Steve and Renee Snowden for commercial medical cannabis registration on APN 068-003-079.
I have to look through my notes here first on the agenda for a public appeal hearing procedure. Number 1, we'll have staff presentation with board questions or staff questions. Number 2, presentation by the appellant. Number 3, presentation by members of the public shall be limited to 5 minutes per person. 4, summation or rebuttal by the appellant is 15 minutes, limited to a 15-minute rebuttal. Number 5, staff summation on the rebuttal, and a rebuttal and a rebuttal by members of the public, then board questions, and then we will close the appeal hearing. So at this time, I will open the appeal hearing, and we will hear from staff.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Yes. I believe I recused myself on the last hearing on this, and I'll probably recuse myself again on this one.
Okay, if you chose to do so. All right, moving forward.
Okay, this is an appeal of the Planning Department's refusal to accept a late application filed by Renee and Steve Snowden. This was actually heard by the board back in August of 2017. At that point in time, the appellant made a request for continuance because their attorney was not available. The board denied that request, held the hearing, and denied the appeal. It was then appealed to the Superior Court, and it was remanded back to the board on December 8th of 2017. And so that was why we're back before you again today. So going back to the registration process, the county adopted the urgency ordinance on May 10th, established the deadline of submittal of June 30th for anyone who wanted to register their existing cultivation area. We were pretty busy towards the end of June. According to Ms. Snowden, she was in line getting ready to submit an application. There was a deputy that was taking names just to sort of call people so they didn't have to actually stand in line. According to her testimony at the Planning Commission hearing, she thought that meant that she would be called to come back. Was waiting for a phone call, and we didn't call her because that was not the purpose of the taking of the names. It was just so that they didn't have to stand in line for 2 hours while they were waiting to submit. On April 24th, 2017, the Snowdens attempted to submit an application. We rejected that because it was past the deadline, and they appealed that decision to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission denied the appeal, finding that the submittal deadline was June 30th. There wasn't any extenuating circumstances that allowed for the late submittal, and again, was heard by the board, was denied then. There's been no new information submitted since the previous hearing, so there's just simply the opportunity for the appellant to be represented by their attorney for this hearing. Do you have any questions?
Any more questions so far? No? Supervisor Oliveira.
Mr. Maurer, thank you for coming this morning. Mr. Maurer, were there any documentation or any explanation given to the deputy when he approached Mr. Snowden in line? Do we have any record of that, or do you have any recall of that?
We do not. Again, we were over in Department 1. We set up a satellite office, just taking the applications that were lined up outside the door. My understanding was that, and again, this is just what we were told through the hearing process previously, that a deputy came up and was taking names. I do remember that was going on, and the purpose of taking names was so that someone could just sit down. They didn't have to stand in line because it was taking all day. People were lined up all day to submit their applications toward the end of June. We do not have any documentation of that. Those names were saved. That was just sort of a daily thing that was going on, so that was not saved that I'm aware of. So to answer your question, no, we do not.
Who would make that decision? Was that your decision, or is there anybody responsible for making that decision and disseminating that information? I know things were very hectic.
So the very last 2 days, we decided that we could not take in all the applications by June 30th. So we said we would, if you're here in line on those days, we will take your name. We did write them down, and we called people to come back after the June 30th deadline. Otherwise, we would have probably been here for 48 hours nonstop taking an application. We just can't do that. But this was not on one of those last days where we actually did take a name. We did contact people. Okay, come in on July 7th to submit your application. We actually then set up appointments for those people. But they had to have a complete application. We did a quick check to say, yes, you've got your paperwork, we've got your name, your contact information. We will call you when we can accept your application because you were here ready to submit, but we're not going to be able to get to you today. And it was the deadline for final submittal. This happened probably a week or so before. I don't know the exact date of when she was here to submit. So there were 2 different times that we were taking names. At the very end of the process, we actually did set up appointments and called people back to say, okay, now we're ready to take your application in. And then earlier in the process, where it was more just sort of a convenience so people could sit down in the shade, go get lunch, and come back, and you didn't have to stand in line for 3 or 4 hours. And those lists weren't saved.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chair.
Supervisor Mills.
I think it'd be important to note that I know that Supervisor Garamendi was here in the hallway at that time, and I was sitting over here by the door to number 1 during those last hours that occurred. So I'm intimately familiar with the process that was being used and how people were responding to the directions they were being given. So I I don't have any real questions about it. I just wanted to make it clear that I was here and aware of what was going on.
Do you have any more presentation?
No.
That's it? All right. We'll have a presentation by the appellant.
Yes, I just brought a little handout. It's almost duplicative of what staff has on file, but there are a couple of new things in here that you might find interesting because they're transcriptions of statements made at the Planning Commission hearing, which Mr. Toffanelli, you should be very well aware of because you were the one that said, hey, we're going to decide this case based upon what was said at the Planning Commission hearing, which is correct, and you don't have to accept new evidence. However, we also have Ms. Muterdy's statements to my client at the end of the Planning Commission hearing where she said, well, if you could bring us some more information or something like that. It was as if they did not believe the process that Renee went through. So I have an original for the clerk and a copy for everybody up there. And I'm going to go through it very briefly as a chronological sequence of events of what happened with some transcriptions put into it. Now, before I start, what are you going to do for me? You got a ban on marijuana now. I come back with a court order to get due process of law, and I can't get it now because marijuana is banned in the county. So I don't know what that does with everything. It makes it interesting, I guess. Renee Snowden was here on June 30th. She was in a line. So were a lot of other people. She was told to sign or put down her name and her phone number, and she would be contacted. She said that at the Planning Commission. And then Exhibit B here is Mr. Mauer's statement at the Planning Commission. And I want to quote him. This is what he told the Planning Commissioners. The last several days of our registration process of June 28th, 9th, and 30th, something like that, we were overwhelmed with the number of registrant applications, and we knew we could not process them all. We would have been, here until midnight on Sunday, probably trying to get through everything on the last day. And so the last couple of days, we did take names and phone numbers of the people that were in line with a complete application, took a quick look at their package. Yes, you have everything here. We will call you. In fact, we took their paperwork and we will call, and we then called them and said, come back in and we will complete our intake process. And that lasted about another week and a half after the June 30th deadline. Now, that is what happened to Ms. Snowden. And I want you to understand that at the commission hearing, and I think it may be the last board hearing, the Snowden's Renee put forward, she had done everything that she was required to do under the application process. She had paid money to the Regional Water Quality Control Board. She got her franchise or Board of Equalization permit. She got a business license. She had done everything she was supposed to do, except now we're told by Mr. Mauer that she didn't submit her application on June 30th when she was told by somebody to just sign her name and leave her phone number and they would be getting in touch with her, which is pretty much what it says here by Mr. Mauer at the Planning Commission hearing. But if you go on, I have Ms. Muterdy's comments to my client about get us more evidence. And so we took that to heart, and Exhibit C is a declaration of Donald Taylor. And Donald Taylor was a cannabis, and he signed this under penalty of perjury. And Mr. Taylor was a cannabis applicant, and he tells you that he was here for 3 days, apparently, from the 28th through the June 30th. And he says in his declaration there were too many applicants for the staff who were supposed to process them. On the third day, I was asked to put my name and phone number on a list. I received a call from staff on approximately July 2nd, 2017, and had my application reviewed.
And then he goes on to say he did not complete the process. He estimated about 200 to 300 applicants were actually processed between June 28th and June 30th. Now, if you recall, the county received, I think, over 700 applications. And if I'm not wrong, the county still hasn't completed processing the applications they got on June 30th, 2016. And what would they be doing with those applications now that there's a ban in the county? I don't know, but they're still processing them for, I guess, state reasons. Channel 10 was here apparently on June 30th and showed what was going on here on the evening news, according to Mr. Taylor. And he said if called as a witness, he could testify to that. So what happened was, my little interjection here, I think somebody at staff lost a sheet of paper with the names and phone numbers of the people who signed up as they were told, because the Snowdens never got a phone call. And after not getting a phone call, they went to Mr. Maurer, and his response was, hey, you missed the June 30th deadline, you're out. And that was the reason for rejecting their application, even though they had proof they had done everything they were supposed to do before June 30th, 2016. Didn't care, you missed the June 30th date, you're out. So, you know, the winds change in this county. And it's probably possible that the application process, the wind in the air, maybe in April of 2017, wasn't as friendly as it was in the summer of 2016. So they're told, go away, you missed the deadline. And now we're here today because they said, hey, that's not fair. You were the ones that told us to leave our name and number and you would contact us, and you never did it. And again, has staff ever produced that piece of paper with Snowden's name and phone number on it? Did they produce the paper that Mr. Taylor signed? The simple thing is we've never seen anything to explain why there was no contact, but I did attach the April 26th letter of Mr. Maurer, where he tells them, once again, that they missed the June 30th, 2016 deadline. And you've read part of staff's report is the May 10th letter by both Renee and Steve Snowden saying, hey, what's going on here? You know, we were supposed to be contacted. You didn't contact us. Planning Commission said, hey, well, you know, that's all well and good, but you didn't meet the June 30th deadline. So they adopted the resolution denying the application. And we requested this appeal, and that, and another interesting thing that happened is after the, while we were in process, the county took it upon itself to abate all the marijuana plants. There were like 300 or 400, and of course at the time they abated it, they thought all was going to be well and good because we had lost. And then a Superior Court judge says, wait a minute, you got to give them a fair hearing, and now we're back, and when we get back, there's a marijuana ban. So it's just an interesting situation where my clients are never going to get due process now because the plants were all destroyed. And so what are we here for today? What can you do for me with a ban in place? I don't think the board can do anything unless they're going to revoke their ban and start poking holes in it and saying, we're going to make an exception here, an exception there. You know, something obviously should be done to compensate the Snowdens for what they went through, because we believe when staff directed getting the names and phone numbers, and we know from Mr. Taylor, they did call back from that list, that they caused people to rely on what they said, and I don't think you can have a denial of a process which is the result of, in this case, negligence or probably some type of misrepresentation maybe they had expectations of doing all the applications in the next week and a half, but if they're still working on them today, I guess that wasn't very realistic at the time. I attached the judge's ruling. I attached our claim form. We filed a claim with the county, assuming that you folks understand that. And then we received the county's denial of our claim, which is Exhibit N, which says, interesting, it's dated May 10th. May 10th is, back in 2016 was a significant date also. So I'm here on behalf of the Snowdens, and I think we were denied due process, and now I don't think we can ever get it, but we're here to complete the process in case the board has some way of resolving this or working this out to where the Snowdens can get due process or something similar to it. So we're all ears, and if you need Renee to confirm under oath that she took care of those items that they had to do before June 30th, I will have her come up here and testify for you if you need that. I think it's in the record. Is it at the Planning Commission? Yeah. I think it's in the record at the Planning Commission where they looked at the fact that she had done everything else she was supposed to do, except she never got called by staff. Thank you very much.
All right, at this time, we'll open it up for public comment. Any members of the public wish to comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. We'll bring it back to staff. Well, actually, we have a summation or rebuttal by appellant, which, you have a question? Which would have to do with the public comment, but we didn't have any public comment.
I actually just had a question for council, but I don't think it's an open session question.
Okay.
You can wait.
All right. We'll have staff summation and rebuttal.
So I don't know when Ms. Snowden came to the county. She claims it was the 30th. We did take down names. We did call everyone. We did not save that list. So I cannot confirm or deny whether she was on that list or not.
You did not save that list?
We did not save that list. Once we had contacted everyone, someone decided we didn't need to save it anymore, and so it was discarded, unfortunately. We had no idea that that list would become something of importance later on. If we lost a portion of the list, I would think we would have a lot more complaints that I was never contacted. And so this is the only application that we received after the fact, and someone claiming that they were never called. So I don't know what happened. I can't say here's a document that shows that she didn't sign the list or she did sign the list. I don't have that and I was not here. I mean, I was in and out of the room, but I did not notice that she was or was not here. What we based our decision on not to reject it was that we believe we contacted everyone on that list. We were fairly, that's what I'm looking for, careful as making sure we didn't miss anyone. And it wasn't until 8 months later that they came in and applied for the application. I think if someone had said, hey, I signed up, I didn't get a call, we would have got a call back within at least a couple of weeks. It is our belief that she did not sign the list. Maybe she intended to. I don't know what happened. But the Planning Commission also felt that there wasn't sufficient evidence to show that they had attempted to submit an application in a timely manner and waited until April to actually finally submit the application.
Any board questions?
I think that Ethan also wanted to add something.
Okay.
I don't want this hearing to be expanded into something that it isn't. This is really a very narrow question. Did the planning director properly deny an application that was attempted to be submitted almost a year late. The deadline was June 30th. Nothing in this packet really is anything in addition to what Mr. Mauer has already said today, at least with regard to the transcript. He explained this morning that there were two sets of lists. First, the one that was just so you didn't have to stand up all day, so you would write your name down and you would be called back to then show planning staff your application and then make an appointment for a future date. Clearly, that is not what happened with Mrs. Snowden. Ms. Snowden wrote her name down on the list, was never called back to make an appointment, never did make an appointment, and was never called back. Mr. Foley indicated that maybe they lost that sheet of paper. As Mr. Mauer implied, had that been the case, other people might have called the planning department and said, hey, I was never called back for my appointment. And the planning department would have undoubtedly accommodated them, but that didn't happen. Also, the length of time between June 30th and April, when she attempted to submit her application, is not explained by the appellant. If I wrote my name down on a list and expected a phone call, I'm not going to wait 10 months to find out what happened and then attempt to submit my application. That alone, I think, would be basis for denial and no further consideration of any other facts. And then finally, I have a point of order. This packet that has been submitted does contain evidence that did not appear previously in the record, including the declaration of the gentleman referenced, and then the other documents I don't really care about, the claims and denial of the claims. I mean, but I think that the declaration is clearly being submitted as evidence that that Mr. Foley and the appellant believes would be determinative to the outcome of this hearing, and if the board wishes to consider it, the option would be to remand it to the Planning Commission with this additional evidence. And I'm not advocating that. I think notwithstanding this declaration, the facts speak for themselves. This application was submitted 10 months late. That the period between the attempted submittal and the later submittal is unexplained, and it seems clear to me on its face that the planning director's decision to reject the application as untimely was totally appropriate in the circumstances.
Questions?
Maybe it's a question for the attorney. Have you reviewed the entire packet that Mr. Foley has presented for whether or not any of this information can be rejected by the board at this time because it does not fit within the parameters of the previous hearing?
Yes, I have been looking through what was just submitted today, and it does appear that the declaration was not part of the record previously, and the other items, I noticed the claim form was executed in March of this year, so that certainly is not part of the previous record, including the rejection letter. So the things that are certainly part of the record and that the board can consider is Exhibit A, which is excerpts from the Planning Commission. Exhibit B, which again are excerpts from the Planning Commission. I believe Exhibit D was already part of the record. That is the letter from the Planning Department dated April 26, 2017. Exhibit E is a letter to the Planning Department dated May 10th, 2017 from the Snowdens. I believe that was part of the record. Exhibit F is part of the record, and that is the resolution denying the appeal dated July 25th, 2017. Exhibit G is the appeal letter that is within the record. Exhibit J, I do not believe that this was part of the record for the planning file because this is a code compliance abatement invoice. That has not been presented by the county. That I would imagine would be in the code compliance files, but it's not associated with the application or the reason for denial of, which is in front of the board today. So that would be in excess of the record that's before you. Exhibit K is in the record. That is the ruling from the Superior Court. And then, as I previously indicated, Exhibit M and Exhibit N are just recent within the last couple of months, and they are not within the record that's in front of this board.
Thank you.
Supervisor Oliveira, your light's on. You have questions?
I do, Mr. Chair. Questions for staff and for the appellate attorney. Mr. Maurer, how many applications were processed, in your opinion? I know I'm not going to hold you to exact standards, between the 28th and the 30th of June during this time. Do we have any idea?
There were several hundred applications that came in during those last few days. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. And then there were another, couple hundred that we accepted after the date, June 30th, but we're here ready to submit. It was our own inability to process those, to accept those applications during that time frame that allowed them to submit after the June 30th deadline.
Thank you. And you mentioned that the contact list was thrown away, or your testimony here, someone disposed of it unknown to us?
The planning department decided we didn't need that list anymore. Lesson learned, never throw anything away. But after we contacted everyone on the list, scheduled all the appointments had been held. The apparent need for the list was no longer necessary.
So that list is gone forever,
gone, yes.
if it all existed, right?
Well, it definitely existed.
Okay, so it existed, but
we did not.
the whereabouts
see it
are
after we
unknown.
completed all those, the intake.
And we've diligently searched for it, correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Maurer. Mr. Foley, questions of you and your client, please. Mr. Foley, can you describe or testify to the fact why no callback was made by the Snowdens until 8 months later?
You know, that's an interesting point. Mr. Turner must have forgotten that he read all the medical records concerning Mr. Snowden's accident that happened before the June 30th deadline. Mr. Snowden was in the hospital, and if you watch the Planning Commission hearing, Ms. Mutertes had apparently read those records and realized that Mr. Snowden was near death when he was in the hospital because of this motorcycle accident. And her approach was very interesting. She said, would you want to leave your husband's bedside if he's about to die to go process a marijuana application or something like that? And this was a very big item to the Snowdens. And this is what I don't understand. They got rejected because they missed a June 30th deadline. But in reality, had staff looked and confirmed that everything they were supposed to have done before June 30th or before September had been done by them. So why would they pay $2,500 to the Regional Water Quality Control Board? Why would they get these applications if they weren't intending to submit an application and they had the money? That wasn't an issue. So the point is, don't say you missed a deadline. Somebody missed the deadline. We're saying staff missed the deadline because they never called them up. They were the ones that invoked a procedure that now we're left with, well, we threw it out. And so we come down to that, and then the next problem I have is, let's say we sit here and you're satisfied that with the Snowdens having spent the money, gotten the permits and the licenses that they were supposed to, that she was there that day and she did sign her name and phone number, And so she really should, the Snowdens should have been given an opportunity to process their application. Even if you find that that's the case, what could you do about it now? See, that's why I'm here saying my clients were damaged. They spent money in preparation of processing an application. Mr. Snowden's in a major accident where his life is threatened. He's got other complications. I would think that that would take priority after June 30th until Mr. Snowden was feeling well enough to go down and talk to Mr. Maurer, which is what my understanding is of what actually happened. So you do have a major injury to Mr. Snowden that is in the picture here, which explains probably a lot of the delay or not caring. Planning Commissioner, is it Laddish? Laddish, excuse me. He said, well, you wouldn't expect him to come in before the grow was over, would you? I mean, he was being a little facetious when he said that, but they had a lot on their plate with Mr. Snowden's health and the injuries he suffered in the accident. So I hope that's an explanation. And, you know, it's funny, the fact that they haven't processed all the applications almost 2 years later has to tell you that this process didn't go as planned and had some bugs in it and some flaws in it. And so my suggestion to you is, I know that, you know, with the ban that went into effect in January, that stops us being able to get an application pending and things of that nature, and an extension for an additional 5,000. But possibly somebody should take into consideration what compensation the Snowdens should be entitled to, because if you believe they were left out of this process, they do have damages. And I know a lot of people hear my name and they think litigation, you know, but that's not always the way it is. And it just seems to me we're in a weird situation here where we're ordered to come back before you to finish our appeal on an issue that we can, even if we're 100% right, we could never get any remedy for. So, I mean, I think it's a very tough situation, but sometimes things work out. So I don't know if that answered your question, but Renee could probably tell you a little bit more if you want her to say something. I'm happy to let her talk, because she was the one that did all the legwork and things of that nature before June 30th.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Foley. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I just wanted to remind this board, because there have been a lot of things said today that go far beyond what the purpose of today's hearing is. And so I want to redirect this board and remind you that what is before this board is determining whether there was sufficient evidence to deny the application and uphold the planning director's decision to deny it and the planning commission's decision to deny it, deny the appeal, based on missing a deadline. So this board has to interpret its codes, its regulations, and apply the facts that are presented to it, and from that decide whether you want to uphold the appeal or deny the appeal. What I don't want to see happen is to go down a very different path that is not for today's purposes. It has been remanded to this board by the Superior Court to have an additional hearing in front of this body with legal counsel present. As this board knows, this has already been in front of you. A request for continuance was made. This board denied the request for continuance, and that was challenged. That's why it's back, because the court felt that this applicant needed an additional hearing in front of you with counsel present. So it is, I want to be clear that there's nothing new for this board to do as far as damages or anything further. It's looking at whether you support or you don't support the facts based on the facts that are in front of you, and whether you believe that it falls within your interpretation and application of of the county code, which is the urgency ordinance at the time.
Could I just say one more thing I forgot to say? Mr. Nichols' declaration was attached to my amended motion to continue that board hearing that the Superior Court now says go back and give him his hearing. So it was part of the record at the time the motion to continue was denied. It was unexecuted at that time, but it was attached, I believe, to my amended motion to continue. So when the Superior Court judge remands it back for further hearing, and part of the motion that was made had that declaration attached to it, I would think that might imply that you're to accept that evidence if it comes in. That's all I wanted to say on that.
I personally do not know if it was attached, but if Mr. Foley indicates that it was attached to his court filings, then yes, that would be included in the record, just like the court ruling was part of the record.
Supervisor Mills?
Yes, I have questions for staff. Did either the Planning Commission or the board at any time allow an extension of time on any application?
Extension of time for submittal?
Meaning that for submittal or for, the deadline was June 30th.
Right.
The question is, have there been any cases where either the Planning Commission or the board has made a decision to amend that June 30th date?
No, other than the group of registrants that we were unable to process on the 30th, that we then took in over the next week and a half to 2 weeks. There have been no subsequent late registrations. Oh, I take that back. There was one. I was thinking of the one that the board granted an appeal, but that was actually a registration that.
That's correct. So there have been no other applications where there was a latitude given on the date of the application as, you know, either you're going to be here on June 30th, you're going to be on a list, or you're going to, there's in some way, shape, or form, we have verification that that person has made an appearance before us. It was up to staff then to follow up.
That's correct.
At a later point. And that could be several hundred.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Supervisor Garamendi.
Thank you. I do recall this presentation very well. One thing I can't recall, though, was there a grow in 2016?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And 2017.
Well, it was abated.
Yeah, it was abated during harvest in 2017. They'd harvested, the code enforcement officer, Mr. Watts, estimated they'd harvested half. And I would go back to an earlier point as well. And Mr. Maurer pointed out to me during the break that he pulled up the medical records that were submitted as evidence, and Mr. Snowden was released from the hospital on July 7th of 2016. And additionally, the Snowdens had staff cultivating cannabis on their property, and if they have staff, the staff could have submitted the application. So I don't really see that as a legitimate argument. That if the board wanted to look at it as some sort of equitable relief or excuse for missing the deadline, they could have submitted it and had employees that would have been available to do that.
Supervisor Oliveira.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Council, make mention of the Channel 10 film. Is that information we can consider at this hearing, although it was referenced in the packet and by other people? And I'm asking that question to lay foundation for another question.
I believe that that was something that was discussed in prior hearings, I believe. So if that's the case, then certainly it's within the record.
Okay. I have a question for your client, Mr. Foley. Yes. Ma'am, could you approach? Ma'am, do you recall a film crew being there?
I don't personally recall a film crew. There were so many people around. I don't remember anybody specifically with a camera, no.
So you wouldn't have any independent knowledge that you may appear on any portion of that film?
I am not sure about that, no.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Foley?
Yeah, try to get that record. The press is pretty good.
Microphone for me, please, sir.
Yes. It's kind of interesting because I did pursue trying to get the tape from Channel 10 to see if maybe she was on it, but I wasn't able to secure it because under the First Amendment, they don't have to give it.
I understand.
And they don't, by the way. Even in murder cases, they sometimes have to be drug into court, and the judge has to try to order it through. So I called, I asked, and then I gave up.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Snowden, you distinctly remember that you were at that particular location during that particular time. Is that correct?
Yes.
How long were you waiting in line?
I was there probably, what took probably a half hour just to get inside the building and into the room. But I was there probably an hour and a half.
Okay.
It was when I got into the room, though, when the officer told me to sign my name and number, put my phone number down, and that I would be contacted. At that time, I asked him, because it was quite a list, there were a couple pages. I asked him how far down the list I was. He said I was probably about number 200. So at that point, when you're looking around the room and there's only so much staff that's working with the registrations and applications, I assumed it just wasn't going to happen that day.
Okay. Did you give them your home phone number or cell phone number?
I only have a cell phone number, sir.
Okay. Did anybody else do that same notification, and did they leave near you?
There were, I'm not sure. There were, like he said, there were around 200 names and phone numbers on that list. I don't know all these. I don't know these people.
Okay. Do you recall anybody, not by name, but anybody that signed that list and left the premises after signing?
Oh, I'm sure there was. There weren't 200 people sitting there with their paperwork. There were like 200 people working with papers. There were a couple gentlemen right in the entrance that were helping people get their packets together so they would have it presentable in order. Other than that, no, I couldn't say yes or no on that.
Okay, so it's unknown to you whether anybody provided that information to that particular person, like the deputy, then left the premises with the impression, and I can't have you speak for those folks, but was it your opinion that they may leave that information, be contacted, and come back later? You don't recall anything like that, right?
I just recall him saying that if I put my name and phone number down, I would be contacted.
Okay, and that you interpreted that to be that same day or following day?
No, not the same day with that many people in there, no.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Okay, thank you.
But may I mention a couple of things, please?
If it's pertinent, yes.
Well, no.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. That's your
Mr.
decision.
Mills and,
Did you speak at the planning commission hearing? Did you get up and speak?
yes, I did.
Okay, all right, then
Yeah.
continue.
So Mr. Garamendi and Mr. Mills were on site when some of this was taking place. Were you at when the registrations and applications were being turned in? I was under the impression the two of you had been here. Was that on the 30th at all?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you see a reporter?
Yes, ma'am.
You did? And you did? Okay. But you don't remember? Do you not remember that there was an officer at this table with people signing their names and numbers?
I don't have a direct memory of that, but I do recognize there were many officers that day walking around the campus.
Well, this one was specifically right inside the door at the table where the paperwork was to be signed. At the commission, like you said, I did speak at the commission. They asked if I had proof of my paperwork. And so I did present all the paperwork that I had in place to turn in the day on the 30th. It was all prior to June 30th. I had everything in place. And they took it, they reviewed it, they took copies of it. The chair commissioner, I'm not sure what her name was, but she did ask me if I could produce evidence of the fact that I was in San Andreas on June 30th. And I said, I wasn't sure. I'd probably have to go home. I'd have to check my gas receipts or whatever. I don't know if I had a receipt. But at that point, she didn't extend anything for me to bring back any receipts or even look for them. She just dismissed it, and then they voted. But that was a 3-2 vote because a couple of the gentlemen did realize I did have everything in place, and I had been there. And what the officer told me, they said, yeah, that's what they would assume too, that I would be contacted by them at a later date. And so why would I be lying about signing a paper and being contacted? And I do want to note that when we first contacted the planning department in April, we talked to Scott Spear. At that point, that first day, when we talked to him, he denied that there was a paper, that there were any papers at all. And it wasn't until we went in and met with Mr. Maurer that it was admitted that there was one, maybe two papers. And so I was really a little upset and confused about that one, because I didn't understand why he would just deny that. As far as getting back to them on April 10th, yes, my husband did get out of the hospital June 7th. He came home, and, you know, I know this is probably, as you told me before, it's being recorded, and, you know, it probably isn't something I need to say, but he came home with a lot of injuries and in a lot of pain. And thank God for Dr. Orman, his pain manager. I was able to deal with that. He came home with a catheter, and 1 week later we had it removed. Then he was diagnosed with a urinary tract E. coli infection, which is not workable with any oral antibiotics. Every 10 hours, I would have to bring him into Sonora Hospital to have an injection until they showed me how to do it myself, and I got a home nurse to come over and help me at some point. But that was like for 18 days. I had to do that every 8 hours. His concussion was very severe, and he was confused. He had been in a trauma coma from the 18th till like the 4th or 5th of July. So he was having major issues. The thoracic vertebrae on his back, 2 through 8, were ripped, and he was not able to move around. He also has stage 4 cancer, and we were trying to work with that and that medication along with everything else. And so Like I had told one of the ladies, it may have been at the commission, I'm not sure, but it's like I had other priorities than to worry about whether the planning department was calling me back at some time. I was dealing with other priorities, and no, I didn't think about the planning commission at that time. And it wasn't until after he was feeling better and I wouldn't have to worry about him and go back and forth to the hospital with him that we finally settled and started discussing stuff. It was a very difficult time, and I feel that I did everything I was supposed to do, and I was, I took the gentleman's word for it that I would be called, and have it taken care of. And I'm really, I don't know, I had assumed that, and I'm sure a few of you would assume the same thing if that's what you were told. I guess code compliance isn't something we can discuss today. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Megan? No? Okay. All right. And as far as the application being signed and turned in, I am the property owner, and I take that responsibility. My staff helps me. They don't have that type of responsibility on my property. I take full responsibility on my property. So that's why I did not have someone else put the application in. Thank you. Any questions?
Supervisor Olivera, your light's on?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, thank you.
Thank
At
you.
this time, I have to ask for any other public comments on any of the testimony given. Seeing no public comments, I will allow Mr. Foley some time for a rebuttal.
I'll submit it. I thought I was rebutting it the last time I got up.
But I'll allow you to.
Yeah, I have nothing else to add. Thank you.
Okay, so any more board questions?
Do we have deliberation now, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, I was going to close the hearing, go into deliberation.
Okay.
There were no more questions. But I have
No more questions.
Okay, I'm going to close the hearing. Then we'll go into board deliberations at this time.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have some deep concerns about this. This information provided in this hearing comparing to the last hearing we had. And reacting to counsel's advice that we are talking about a procedure here. I'm not convinced that we did everything we possibly could as a county at the time that this application was attempted to be submitted, and then 3 or 4 days later, allowing people to do exactly what we did not allow, if that in fact happened. That is my concern. The concern is with the procedure and the changes that we made to adapt to a ever-changing situation. I was aware of the chaos. I do not place blame with any individual or department in this county. But I do feel that there's significant evidence here that maybe that application was submitted or attempted to be submitted, and through some misinformation that could have occurred, was not submitted in a timely manner. Unfortunately, we have no evidence to prove or disprove that. At this point, I am of the opinion to consider not to allow, actually to allow this appeal.
I mean, not to uphold.
Not to uphold the appeal. I'll be quite honest with you folks, there's way too many holes in this I stand on accurate information, obtaining all the information we possibly can to make a wise decision. This is not a marijuana thing. This is a procedural thing. And there are going to be ramifications. But let's talk about what's on the table right now. And that is, I don't think we did our best job. And in all fairness, I have to rule in that way.
Supervisor Mills.
I'm looking at Exhibit F, and I know council said we could include it. In the last page, it says ayes, Tofinelli, Garamendi, Mills, absent, Olivera, Clapp. Is that an incorrect? Because you voted against the denial in the previous meeting?
What's the record say?
The record says you were absent, sir.
I didn't vote. I wasn't here.
I'm
May have
just
been absent.
trying to.
I think he was absent that day. If
Good.
I'm
I
wrong.
heard it for the first time.
Okay.
If, I don't, there's no reason to believe that that record is incorrect, but certainly, there's nothing that would prevent him from hearing the hearing today
No,
that's in front of him.
I understand. It's just a point here that it led to some confusion when he had made the statement he made. I don't see any evidence where either by board action, by a planning commission action, or by an action of the planning department of any late application being approved after the fact. Even though you had several hundred come in, I think it's a supposition to state that there was a possible lost list, or lost page of a list. And I'm looking to staff only to indicate that unless there's proof that a page was ripped out, and you had numerous people say, wait a minute, I submitted late, I signed the paper, and therefore, you know, there's more than one that says this, there may be some validity to it. So I'm going to have to leave that as a supposition. I don't see any other application that was given a latitude on an extension of the date, especially to say 10 months later, and to come back in and I mean, if it was me making an application, I would have been all over your case. And I'd wanted to know some answers to when did you expect me to be here, no matter what. And if it wasn't me, I'm sure I would find somebody to make your life miserable until you gave me the answers. So I don't see any, I think that by not denying this application, we're setting a precedent. And that is my biggest concern here. Did we do it all by the ordinance? No. The ordinance didn't state clearly how you were going to process everything, but it did state clearly what the date was going to be. And it's that date that we have to work to. If a board, the previous board had said, do some other things on top of that, there would have been some way to work around it. But there is nothing within the ordinance that gives us that ability. So I would have to continue to uphold this denial.
Supervisor Garamendi.
I remember this very clearly. I've heard, I have no new evidence here that caused me to change my position.
And I'll have to agree with that. I don't see any new evidence that's presented today that would change my opinion on this matter that was presented. Same evidence presented last time to us, and I'm in position to uphold my stance on it from back then. So I'm looking for a motion. Excuse me.
I just wanted to add this to the record since Supervisor Mills inquired. When looking at the resolution that is attached in Exhibit F, it says that it's July 25th, 2017, but the resolution number indicates that it was at the meeting on August 22nd. So staff, we looked into why there was the discrepancy in this document as presented. And what appears happened, if you recall, there was a hearing set for July 25th, 2017, when the appellant's attorney was not able to be present. The board did continue it that time to August 27th, or excuse me, August 22nd, for the full board to be present and for council to be present. But unfortunately, he wasn't able to be present that day either, which is what caused the denial of the continuance and for us to go down that path. So I just wanted the record to be clear that that although the resolution indicates July 25th, the action was actually on August 22nd, 2017, and Supervisor Oliveira was in fact absent from that board meeting. And so that's why it reflects that way.
Thank you.
Now I recall.
So I am open for a motion.
I'll make the motion that we deny the application, or the, accept the Planning Commission's denial of this application, an appeal.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second for denial. Any other comments?
And would that be with the amended date on the resolution?
With the amended resolution as noted.
Thank you. Call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 3-1. Okay.
Thank you very much. I mean that seriously for your consideration.
All right, Madam Clerk, moving on to item number 5. Excuse me, it's a 11:45. This next one has a projected time frame of about an hour and a half. So would we like to take lunch from now until 1 o'clock and then resume the rest of the appeals at 1 o'clock? Does everybody agree to that? 1 o'clock, so we would stand in recess till 1 o'clock for lunch. All right, we are back from lunch and we're back in session. So, Madam Clerk, item number 5.
Item 5 is from the Planning Department to conduct a public hearing and adopt a resolution upholding the Planning Commission's denial of the appeal of the Planning Director's denial of commercial medical cannabis registration 2016-943 for Leslie Denham Newman on APN 040-009-041.
Okay, again, I'll run through the procedures. I'll open the hearing. We'll have staff presentation with board questions of staff, presentation by the appellant, and then presentation by members of the public comment. That'll be limited to 5 minutes per person on their comments. Then we'll bring it back for summation and rebuttal by the appellant. It'll be 15 minutes for that. Then we'll have staff summation and rebuttal. And then the SIR rebuttal by members of the public. We'll open it up after that, again for public comment. And then we'll have board questions to anyone, staff or the appellant. And then I will close the appeal hearing and we'll go into a discussion and deliberation of the court. So, I open the appeal hearing.
Good afternoon. This is an appeal of commercial cannabis registration 2016-043. It's located at 2200 Gold Strike Road. This is an appeal of the Planning Commission's denial of the cultivation registration, or of the Planning Commission's denial of the appeal of the Planning Director's denial of the cultivation registration. This was previously heard by the board but remanded back to the Planning Commission when new information was presented by the appellant as required by our code. It goes back to the Planning Commission to consider that new information. The Planning Commission considered that, denied the appeal, and has been subsequently appealed back to you. The new information that was provided, well, let me step back. This application was denied when the Planning Department received a second notice of incomplete application from the Water Board that the application filed by the appellant to the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board for a notice of applicability was incomplete. Our code requires that as of September 7th, 2016, a complete application for notice of intent needed to be filed with the Water Board. The Water Board then processed those applications when they were found to be in compliance, issued a notice of applicability. They were equally swamped as we were, probably more so. The water board covers everything from south of us all the way up to the Oregon border, everything within the Central Valley region. So they were obviously under a lot of stress in the application process, and so it took some time for them to review all of their applications as well. An application was submitted to the water board by the appellant for Tier 2 registration. I believe it was in August of 2016. Shortly after the deadline for submittal of that information to us, the water board notified the appellant that it was the wrong tier and needed to do a Tier 3 application. We received a notice of incomplete application at that point in time. We were busy working on other applications, didn't really do anything about it until the second notice came out in June of 2017. At that point, the notice of incomplete application provided 30 days for the registrant to make a complete application. We waited for that 30-day period. We were not contacted by the registrant at all during that time. And after receiving the notice from the water board, that they had not completed the registration process, in September of 2017, we denied the application. The new information that was provided was phone records that showed that the appellant had called the water board staff in order to try to remedy that situation. However, the Planning Commission found that that was insufficient evidence to demonstrate a good faith effort to correct the deficiencies of the application. That there was two calls made within about a week after the first, the notice was sent to the registrant, and another one about a month later. And it wasn't until almost a month after that that the county actually denied the application. So at no time during that period did the registrant contact the planning department saying, wait, I'm working on this, with the application, or with the water board to correct the application. We have bent over backwards to try to assist registrants to work through the process, to work with the agencies, but they have to show that they're working with us. It's not the county's responsibility to contact the registrants. It's the registrant's responsibility to inform the county of what's going on with their application. So the Planning Commission denied the appeal on remand, finding that 3 calls to the water board did not constitute a good faith effort. And they also noted that the application is still incomplete. They have not submitted the biological reports required, and if I remember correctly, the fee still had not been paid for the water board permit. So with that, staff is recommending that you uphold the Planning Commission's denial of the registration and the appeal of the registration. Do you have any questions?
Any questions at this time? Seeing none. Chris, presentation.
I'm Chris Williams. I'm appearing for the applicant registrant here. You all feeling a little sleepy after lunch? I think the chronology is really important here, and Peter provided some of it, but it doesn't really get at the heart of it, I don't think. For the life of me, I really have never been able to understand why the staff is working so hard to deny this application under the circumstances. This guy really has never done anything wrong. He's never received any environmental citations. He's had inspections. What the paperwork keeps saying is that he didn't inform the county. He didn't inform the county of the denial of his application. You got to look at what happened here. He filed a Tier 2 application on August 10th of 2016. The Water Board said that was incomplete by a notice in September of 2016. What the staff keeps saying in all their staff reports is the Water Board doesn't have his application. He didn't file a second application. But the evidence points to the fact that he did. And that was even kind of discussed in the Planning Commission. He went to the trouble to get all 4 signatures of all 4 landowners on the new Tier 3 application. He says he sent it in. I have every reason to believe he did send it in, and as they explained, the mass of applications before the Water Board created a chaotic situation. I think they just misplaced it. They just missed it. So he said he filed that at the end of October of 2016. Well, then he didn't hear anything. But I'm not sure it's up to him to be calling the Water Board and saying, what are you doing with my application? What are you doing with the processing? Well, he didn't know that they didn't have it. He didn't know they said they didn't have it until they issued a second notice on June 27th of 2017. And what was his reaction? He actually got that notice probably the first week of July of 2017. He calls him up, the guy he had dealt with. He leaves a message. Nothing. He calls him up, leaves another voicemail message. Third time, August 18th, he leaves another voicemail message. Now that second notice of incomplete was sent to staff. They knew about it. They knew he'd received this notice. Now they're saying they don't have any obligation to inform him. He has an obligation to inform them. You think after you paid $30,000 in taxes and fees, you might deserve a phone call before your application is denied. The other thing that staff's papers have said consistently is that, as I say, one that he didn't file. Well, he did file. And secondly, that he didn't inform the staff. But he did everything he could as quickly as he could. When you look at it, if the staff and the applicant got the second notice of incomplete the first week in July, they rejected his application the first week of September. The first month, he was calling people at the board, at the Water Board. And let me make it clear, the Water Board, throughout this process, even now, is perfectly willing to work with him. He hasn't violated any environmental standards. But the statement that he still hasn't filed the right information, they told him when he got his situation on appeal straightened out with the county, they would accept his application. You can look at their correspondence, their email correspondence. And it says, pending your resolution of your appeal with the county. Why would he go spend another $30,000 on environmental consultants while this sort of Damocles is hanging over him? So, I mean, he hasn't done anything wrong. He didn't unduly delay. His reaction was perfectly right on. He gets this denial. He says, well, what's this about? You know, I filed back in October. And at that point, he learns they don't have his application. And he's calling, you know, when he gets nowhere on the phone because of a shift in staff and he can't get in touch with people at the Water Board, he calls the planning department staff from Madeline Flandreau. She tries to get in touch with the water board without success for several weeks. But by then, you know, the denial was in. So I don't see where there's been any harm to the public, to the environment, to the county. The only harm I see here is to the applicant. That's it in a nutshell.
Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Supervisor Oliveira.
Sir, are you aware if there's an appeal process with the State Water Quality Control Board?
I am not aware, but in this situation, there hasn't been any reason to avail himself of it because they're open-armed, welcoming his application at any time.
County Council, are you aware of any appeals process with the State Water Quality Control Board? I'm asking because I don't know.
I'm not familiar. We're not involved with that agency's appeal process. I'm not familiar with, I would imagine that they would have some kind of appeal process, but I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, thank you. Follow-up question would be, did your client inquire if there's an appeal process? Do you have that knowledge?
I don't have that knowledge, Supervisor Oliveira, but see, if you look at the email correspondence that's been filed and made a part of this record, they make very clear that it's all clear for him to file whenever he's done with this process here in a favorable manner. They made that very clear. So he didn't need to appeal the denial.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Garamendi.
Thank you. Did your client grow the last 2 years?
I believe he did.
Okay, this one's for planning staff. Have we sent someone out there to inspect?
There's no record in the file of an inspection having been done.
There is no?
There's nothing in our file that shows that inspection was done, whether it was signed off or not. At least on our.
It's okay. I was just looking at Google Earth, and I've been to a lot of farms. This is a big one.
Yeah.
It looks like if it's not 22, it's more.
That I couldn't
But I know we
speak to.
don't have any, it's neither here nor there. I'm not part of this. Peter, do we have other examples of WCB not getting back to people? Is this a common problem? Have you seen this in the hundreds of applications we've done?
The water board has taken their time in processing the applications. Applications that were filed in August, September, in some cases, a notice didn't go out until January, whether it was incomplete. This one actually got one fairly quickly, if it was just a couple of weeks into September, that the first notice went out. And apparently he did. He may have filed an application or at least responded in some way then. I don't know if there's been difficulty in corresponding with the registrants from the water board. We have experienced difficulties at times getting a hold of staff, and there have been changeovers in staffing at the water board. But everything has been, we have documents of the correspondence that was made to the registrant, and it was always copied to us on those. So any time that a letter was sent out to any of the registrants for whatever reason, whether it's issuance of the NOA, notice of incomplete application, we got a copy of it.
So, and your client did pay his taxes? Paid his
As far as
fees?
I know, yes, he has.
All his taxes, the canopy tax on that? Thank you.
Any other questions by the board?
And if I could make one thing clear, I know there's a ban in effect, but what he wants to at least be in a position to do is to carry forward, if he decides to in another jurisdiction, with a clean regulatory record, with no dings, with no denials, with no black marks. That's why he wants this denial reversed.
Okay. At this time, we have no other board questions. I'll open it up for public.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, there was a question about inspections, and there was an inspection correction list that was issued on May 25th, 2017, and there was several items that were listed on it. Needed to get a greenhouse, needed to permit the greenhouse with the electrical. There was other electrical wiring, as well as grading permit information that was required. That was issued on May 25th, 2017. There was no record of whether or not those corrections were made. They may have been, I don't know.
Good question. Mr. Williams, did your client conduct, since we're arguing that he did everything that he was supposed to do except for this one, did he make these corrections?
He told me he did. In fact, that was one of his points to me, was that he said, I was in and out of the county offices all the time, getting grading permits and this and that, things that I had to do. He says, I did all of them. Nobody ever mentioned to me that I was in some default somewhere in some respect.
Do you have any record of whether the work was done?
There's nothing in the file that I can see that there was a final sign-off by the code enforcement inspections that those permits were complied with. They may have been, there's nothing in my file. To the point of Mr. Williams, the building department wouldn't have known if he was in for a building permit. The public works department wouldn't have known that he was deficient in the water board requirements had he gone in for a grading permit. If he had come to the planning department office and said, what's the status of my application? I just want to check on it, we would have told him. But that never happened.
Again, we're talking about really a 2-month window. And the first part of that, he was on the phone trying like mad to get in touch and see what had gone wrong at the water board.
That's the phone evidence that's submitted?
Yes, we did.
Two phone calls. One at 1:29 and one at 12:09?
And one at 8:18.
Yeah.
One at 8:18.
In fact, when...
That's hardly calling like crazy, Mr. Williams. I would.
Yeah, but you look at the time, 3 minutes
calls me more
here.
than that. Sorry.
Well, you could tell that he must have been leaving some kind of substantive messages, because the phone calls were 3 minutes or 2 minutes, and he was the planning commission noted that. So he was trying to remedy the situation, and I think it's kind of laughable when the October 26, 2017 staff report says, oh yeah, but he didn't call anybody between July 11th and August 18th. And like, if he had made one more call, that would have made all the difference in the world.
Is that one more question?
I think it was between August 18th and when they denied him. But there's just no substantive violation. There's no proof of harm. And I mean, how about a little bit of agency applicant comedy? I mean, after all, you got a guy that's paid taxes and $30,000 in fees and taxes, and they just tubed him. Didn't even ask him. And you say it's not their responsibility. If they know that he's received his second notice, they should inquire. We're we're going to deny you here. We can't see anything happening. All they did was just do that. He would tell them, but he had to go to them. He had to get denied and then go and say, wait, I've been trying like mad to get this straightened out with the water board. Can you help me, Madeline? Which she tried. And she got nowhere until she finally got in touch with a guy, I think, named Michael Parker. And he's the one that wrote all the emails since that say, hey, you're fine with us. You can still apply. Just, just hold off until you're cleared on your appeal, for your denial with the county. And that's where it was left.
Is your client here?
He is not here.
Did he appear at the Planning Commission?
Yes, he did.
Thank you.
I'm looking at staff report dated May 15th, 2018. I'm looking at on the board packet, page 87, and the first paragraph, and it says, a copy of the notice of incomplete NOI was forwarded to the planning department. And it says, on June 27, 2017, the CVRWQCB sent the applicant or the appealant a second notice of incomplete NOI, stating that in order to obtain coverage under the general order, the applicant needed to respond within 30 days. And it's saying that he was sent a notice. According to the staff report on the 27th, you're saying he never received it.
No. He received the second notice of incomplete, but until then, he thought they had his application and they were processing it. He didn't know that they were going to say they didn't have it. They never had it.
So he had the first one and said he filed it incomplete because it was under a tier. Because
right,
he was under a different tier,
right,
and they wanted him to resubmit
to tier 3.
For tier 3,
which he did.
Okay. And then you're saying on these calls, he made 3 phone calls, one on 7/6, one on 7/11, and one on 8/18, and all he did was leave messages. He never got a response back from the person he was leaving these messages to at the water board.
That's correct, and that kind of gets into one of the other points I made in my paper is what is the responsibility of an applicant to fully know and understand the processing issues of another agency, a regulatory agency like the water board. He had been working with the water board quite a bit, so he knew that there were problems. He had gotten some misinformation the first time around on, the square footage of his grow and tier 2 or tier 3, and so he had kind of this impression that, it's sitting there, they're processing it, and what's his responsibility to call them up and say, hey, I haven't heard from you on my submittal. The normal thing would be you would wait to hear from them, and he did. He got the second notice of incomplete. But as soon as he learned that, he got on the horn and was trying to get in touch with people.
Okay. All right, at this time I will open it up to the public. Any public members wish to speak on this item? None coming forward? All right. to say, Chris? There was no public comment. Usually we give an opportunity to answer any public comments or questions to you after, but there was no public comment. So I will give you an opportunity to speak in a few minutes again after staff. Staff, you have your summation and rebuttal.
Just a couple of points. Yes, it's true that the water board is willing to work with the cultivators to meet the water board requirements. That's their mission. While they are working cooperatively with us to ensure that those that are cultivating have the water board permits and vice versa, they're still looking after how to protect the water quality of the state. And so they want to make sure that those who did cultivate are in compliance with their rules and regulations. So of course they would still accept the information to ensure that water quality rules of the state are met. And so as far as them allowing the continued cooperation with that agency, even if they've been denied here, that would make sense from the water board's perspective. The other thing to point out is that assuming that an application was filed in October of 2000, or shortly after the first notice of incomplete went out, it was still an incomplete application at that point in time. There was no biological assessment, there was no site management plan, and so that's been an incomplete application since that point in time. And so to say you've been diligently working with the water board, it's just not factually correct. You've made an attempt to work with them, but there's been no complete application filed. Long before the denial went out, it was an incomplete application. And with the second notice, we said, well, apparently he doesn't, isn't concerned about that, and so after a time period went by, we denied the application. We do not have the capacity to notify every applicant that, hey, we're missing this one thing. Actually, we've done quite a bit of that. We've gone through the paperwork and say, we're still missing certain documents. You need to submit it. But it's ultimately up to an applicant to know what the rules and requirements are for a permit from the county. And this was very clear. There were deadlines for submittal. There was well known what the requirements were. And we were always ready to answer questions. But for us to reach out to 740 applications or applicants when something was missing, especially something that had been ongoing for some time. We had 2 notices of incomplete application with nothing from the applicant that would have indicated he was working with them. If I were in that position, I would have said, hey, county, I'm working with the water board, let you know that I'm still in process. I want to make sure that my application is still good, and not just wait for someone to call me back. So based on that, we denied the application, and the planning commissions upheld that decision.
I just have a couple of points in addition to, Mr. Williams pointed out that there had been some confusion between the appellant and the water board as to whether or not a Tier 3 application was required. However, as was pointed out by Commissioner Wooster during one of the hearings, it's what a Tier 3 application is it's right on the face of the application. This is in your board packet. I mean, it says cultivation areas and associated facilities occupy more than 1 acre. And that's one of the criteria, and his site clearly did, and he acknowledged during those hearings that it did. He had a debate about whether or not it was 200 feet from a wetland. The water board thought that it was. He disagreed. There was some other issue about an exemption. But the difference between a Tier 2 and a Tier 3 application is very substantial. Not only is the fee $10,000 rather than $2,500, but it requires a biological site assessment, as Peter indicated, a cultural resource assessment, and as well as a site management plan, which requires expenditure, as Mr. Williams estimated, of $30,000 or more. So by cultivating for 2 seasons without complying with applicable law, he just saved himself a lot of money. He saved himself at least $40,000. And Mr. Williams asked what the responsibility of an appellant is or an applicant is, and in his papers talked about us requiring him to stand in the water board's shoes. I don't think we're requiring anything like that. It seems to me that a person ought to pay the fee for the application and conduct the mandatory prerequisites, which all other cannabis cultivators in this county did. They all paid the 10 grand. They all got cultural resource assessment, site management plans, and biological site assessments. And Mr. Denham Newman didn't, and therefore had an incomplete application. So Mr. Mauer's department was totally correct in its assessment. He didn't have a complete application, and that's a fair and reasonable basis for denial. There's nothing unfair happening.
Supervisor Mills, your light's on.
Yeah, my question has to do, again, with context. He said he was advised by the Water Board staff in September 2016 to reapply for Tier 3. And in what way did that advice come? Did that come via phone call? Did it come via letter? I'm going to assure you that if that was their advice, it was probably via letter. Just knowing how they work. Because recall, back in 2016, I wasn't on this board at this time, but Trey Sherrill with the Water Board, who was the initiator of a lot of the work, it was based out of Reading, was the one doing that work. I had a lot of phone calls with Trey. He answered my phone. When he went away, he made sure that I knew who else was going to be involved, and I have their cards. I'm just having a difficulty with the idea of having a phone record that shows a 1-minute contact call, because the first 59 seconds don't count anyway when you look at a phone record. It's either a minute or 2 minutes. It's broken up into blocks of a minute. To say you have a 2-minute contact call, I can't even leave a voicemail message in 2 minutes and get that phone answered correctly. So I'm just having a problem with that phone record of having such short contacts and saying that they actually had a reasonable conversation with whoever's on the other end of the line. I don't know if that's just me thinking here, but a reasonable effort is on the part of the applicant. Can you go back and just reread 165N4 again? Have you got it with you somewhere?
To answer your question, yes, he received a letter dated September 13, 2016 with an incomplete notice of intent. Indicated the incorrect tier size was based on size and distance to the surface water body.
Do you remember also what it says regarding the resolution of that, of how they explain in that letter how to resolve it, don't they? Down towards the bottom? Or it might be on the second page.
Please resubmit a signed NOI with the missing or incomplete information that's indicated above. Please note that if the proposed cultivation site requires enrollment under Tier 2 or Tier 3, a biological site assessment, cultural resource inventory, and site management plan may be needed to be completed and submitted with the revised NOI.
So they not only tell you that you're not in compliance, but they also tell you what to do to fix it.
Correct.
At that same point.
Yes.
And that doesn't require a phone call. That doesn't require phone calls to anybody. That simply says you go back on the site and get the form necessary, fill out the paperwork, and file it right.
And like 17.95, 165N4 says the registrant must demonstrate compliance with the Central Valley Division of Water Quality Control Board regulations by providing documented evidence satisfactory to the planning director of either A, copy of the notice of applicability enrolling the cultivator for coverage in the general order consistent with the area proposed for cultivation, or a copy of the notice of intent to enroll the cultivator for coverage under the general order consistent with the area proposed for cultivation. If the registrant does not file the notice of intent with the Water Quality Control Board prior to the submittal of the registration to the county, the registrant shall submit all necessary forms and documents to the Water Quality Control Board to constitute a complete application for the agency's purposes no later than September 7th, 2016, and provide a copy of the documentation indicating receipt by the Water Quality Control Board to the planning board.
So anything other than what is stated in N4 is incomplete.
Yeah, there is no, the application did not contain, biological site assessment didn't contain a check for the application, didn't contain site management plan or cultural resources.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other board questions? If not, Mr. Williams, I'll give you a couple minutes. But again, just a few minutes.
Again, it's kind of, who do you believe? What do you, if you're an applicant or registrant, whose directions do you follow? It's going to just take me a minute here because there's a lot of stuff. One thing is, if you look at the emails that have been submitted in the course of these appeals, you'll find an explanation for why he did what he did in terms of his submittals. This is a series, and they were certainly, I can't remember whether they were before you in total at your first hearing or whether they all came in before the Planning Commission, but I think they've all been in the whole time. When this happened, when the denial occurred, well, then he got into conversations with Trey Sherrill, who was at that point gone. He'd left the State Water Board. But he found him and asked questions about clarification. He says, September 2016, several phone conversations with Trey Sherrill of the Water Board. During these phone calls, I made it explicitly clear that my site does not qualify as Tier 3 because it is in fact just over 200 feet from the North Fork Calaveras River. And furthermore, my site does not exceed 1 acre in size. I requested an on-site measurement. These conversations culminated in Trey recommending that I submit a new NOI as Tier 3, but not pay additional fee or submit any supplemental paperwork. His reasoning for this was that they were very backed up and we could revisit my assertions when the Water Board got caught up with their current backlog. I do not have the exact date, but either in late September or early October, I submitted the Tier 3 NOI. Okay? That's Trey Sherrill writes him back. Says the events as you describe them are certainly plausible. It was a super busy, crazy time as we were somewhat developing the regulatory program on the fly with a flood of applications from Calaveras County. I wish you the best. Other emails from the Water Board, this one from Michael Parker. There is nothing that precludes you, and this is dated January 10th, 2018, after the denial, after we filed a couple appeals here. No, there's nothing that precludes you from enrolling in the new statewide cannabis general order on our end. And there's even more compelling testimony of emails than
Is
that.
that information that was not presented?
That was presented.
Okay.
All these emails were part of the record. I'm just looking for one that's even clearer. Okay, here we go. This is from Michael Parker. It's dated September 19th, 2017. Thank you for getting in contact with me. As per our discussion, you stated you're working on providing the requested documents for the specific tier size of your site. This conversation has satisfied the second notice of incomplete, in which the 30 days to respond no longer applies. After we receive the required documentation, we can move forward with the permitting process. Now, this is in response to his question. He says, if I'm allowed to proceed with my registration from Calaveras County, can you confirm there's nothing barring me from enrolling the Water Board Cannabis General Order? And then we get very clear with Michael Parker. The State Water Resources Control Board, I don't know if there's a date on this. Looks like it's January of this year. The State Water Resources Control Board adopted a statewide general order on 17 October 2017. Since we have yet to receive the documentation needed to process your enrollment under the Central Valley Board's order, you will have to reapply under the statewide general order for coverage pending the outcome of your appeal with the county. You will be receiving a letter from us shortly that explains this. The enrollment portal from the statewide general order can be found at the following locations. So these are the signals he's getting from the state board that he's okay. Yeah, he got a notice of incomplete on his second submittal, which they apparently lost, but he didn't know they lost. But they're saying, yeah, as soon as you get your denial of your appeal straightened out, then let's start down this road on this regulatory framework that he mentions here. So I think you got to cut the applicants some slack. They're not experts in every agency's regulatory regime. I mean, he's talking to people in the water board, and they're telling him what to do, giving him advice, and he's going with it. So say, well, he still hasn't submitted the application. No, he hasn't. He was told he didn't need to. And if I had an appeal pending that was life or death, I wouldn't have done it either. Spend $30,000. He'd retain people. He lined up all of his environmental consultants, but he just didn't give them the go-ahead when he was given this direction and instruction from the water board. Am I making myself clear?
Questions? Okay, thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
All right, do I have any other public comments at this time on the issue? No? Okay. Board questions? Mr. Alvera, you have your light on?
I do, Mr. Chair. Mr. Maurer, how big is this parcel? And the cultivation site is?
They registered 22,000 square feet.
And within 200 feet of that location for the cultivation site, is there a stream or live stream as indicated?
I believe it's the Calaveras River is approximately 200 feet. I think the question that the water board had that was pointed out in Mr. Parker's email was that it's not just the cultivation area that they count as far as the surface, it's all the surface associated with it. And that's the September 19th email from Mr. Parker to Mr. Newman that Mr. Williams just read And that requirement is stated on the face of the application. It says 1 acre of disturbed earth, including facilities. So driveway, pump house, et cetera, all counted as far as the water board was concerned. And Mr. Williams can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that during the Planning Commission hearing, Mr. Denham Newman acknowledged that he realized that his site, on that basis alone, required a Tier 3 application. And if I'm misremembering that, you can correct me, Mr. Williams, but I believe Mr. Denham Newman acknowledged that he knew that his site, at least subsequent to his conversations with Mr. Parker, was a Tier 3. And as far as I'm concerned, his ongoing failure beyond that acknowledgement to get the required site assessments done speaks to failure to make reasonable and good faith efforts to comply with the general order. And again, as Mr. Mills pointed out, it was incumbent upon Mr. Denham Newman to provide evidence of a complete application to Mr. Maurer by September 7th, 2016. And as Mr. Maurer alluded earlier, the State Water Resources Control Board does have an open door policy to anyone who wishes to register, because their mission is to protect the waterways. And so every cannabis farmer anywhere within their jurisdiction is always welcome to comply with their requirements as far as they're concerned. But our code says that they have to provide proof of a complete application by September 7th, 2016, and there's no way you can look at the situation and find that was accomplished.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Mills.
So let's go back to what staff had said in an email now after September, this is September 21st, 2017, where it stated she understands the miscommunication during the conversation with you and Trey, but the record only shows that your site has been out of compliance with the Water Board's requirements for over a year, and no action was taken until you received a denial letter. Okay, how much do you need poked, in essence, to get your attention? Our requirement was September 7th of 2016, and there should have been a concerted effort on the part of the applicant. And I'm not hearing that there was a concerted effort on the part of the applicant to come into compliance with that point for N4.
I share your point of view.
Okay.
Can I respond to that?
No, we're board questions right now. Any other board questions? If not, I'm going to close the hearing. We'll enter into board discussions and deliberations. Any comments? All right, is there a motion? Do I have anybody wanting to?
Mr. Chair, I so moved to uphold the decision of the Planning Commission to appeal this request.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Clarification on what the action was, I didn't understand the motion.
There was a motion to uphold the appeal denial by the Planning Commission.
To uphold the denial?
Yeah. Of the appeal. All right, moving on to item number 6.
Mr. Chair, I show on the staff report that a PowerPoint presentation is included in this. Does the department need time to set up?
No, that was the PowerPoint from the Planning Commission presentation.
Oh, okay. So item 6 is from the Planning Department to conduct a public hearing and adopt a resolution upholding the Planning Commission's denial of the appeal of the Planning Director's denial of commercial cannabis registration 2016-729 for Carlos de la Osa III on APN 049-009-012, file number 2016-729.
Is the appellant present?
No, he's in Florida with his family.
He's in Florida, so the appellant is not present.
Mr. Chair, to that effect, I received a call from the appellant on Friday the 11th requesting if it was possible to get a refund and withdraw his appeal. I explained that a refund wasn't possible, but he could certainly withdraw it and to give me that request in writing, and I have not received that request yet.
County Council, moving forward.
Is there anyone else here that is present on his behalf? Or that was going to speak on his behalf?
I'm here to speak for the landowner.
Yeah, even so, we would have to have some type of proof that they're representing him if they're not a lawyer, I'm sure. So, well, if he's not here, then we can move forward with denying his application or his appeal.
Well, you would still conduct the hearing, yes.
Okay, all right. So I will open the hearing and we will hear from staff.
Chair, before we start, has there been any counsel present at any of the previous hearings on this matter?
With this appeal, no.
Thank you.
And yesterday, I received a letter from one of the neighbors signed by several of the other neighbors on Golden Gate Drive there in support of upholding the denial.
I just wanted to note that letter was in fact submitted to the board clerk and was disseminated to the board, I believe, yesterday via email directly from. But we can.
Yeah, counsel, I have a question. Seeing that that letter was submitted to the board, and could that be or construed as new evidence not heard by the planning commission?
Yes, that would be the case. I mean, certainly it's correspondence to the board, but as far as this appeal is concerned, it is not part of the record.
Then we are under no obligation to consider that.
You do not have to.
But
You're
we
not
can
required
if we
to.
choose.
Certainly.
But we can if we choose, correct?
You can. I would caution. Our code allows for you to have the option to refer it back to the Planning Commission to consider new evidence if that new evidence would alter or affect the outcome of the Planning Commission's decision. Considering that would support the Planning Commission's decision, I don't believe that that would be necessary or prudent under the circumstances. But the board, like I said, it is not part of the record, but it certainly is correspondence that the board was privy to.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to make sure that we have clarity here. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So, Ben Diamond, planner trainee, appeal 2016-729 for Carlos de la Osa. This application was denied for 3 reasons. For failing to notify the planning department and provide new contact information within 72 hours of a change in their contact information occurring. The appellant admitted to this during the hearing, saying that he did have a change in his mailing address and forgot to notify the planning department of that change. And because he didn't notify the planning department that his mailing address had changed, the packets that the sheriff's office sent to him over the course of several months in order to finish the background check were never received, and because of that, he failed to complete the background check process as well. And on April 20th, 2017, Code Compliance conducted an inspection of the site. At this time, there was no cultivation observed, just a very large graded pad. A review of aerial imagery found that this pad was graded after the May 10th, 2016 deadline. It was very much in the portion of the parcel designated as the cultivation area and resulted in an expansion of the cultivation site by roughly 5,000 to 6,000 square feet. And based on those grounds, the Planning Commission voted to deny it on all the findings that staff made.
Any board questions?
Was there a permit issued for the grading?
Yes, the applicant did apply for a grading permit, but conducted the work prior to the permit being issued. And to my knowledge, a grading permit has not been issued for the work to date.
Nor any kind of site plan?
I believe he was sent red lines concerning the site plan, that it was
Okay.
deficient in some regard.
So there's never been an inspection by the county for the work that was performed?
Subsequent to the April 20th inspection by code compliance, no.
Okay, thank you.
Did he actually grow in 2016 and 2017?
I believe so.
I guess the question would be, I believe so. I'd
The
like to
aerial
be sure
images
that...
of 2016 show that he certainly grew prior to the pad being graded over the 2016 cultivation area.
Okay, so
And
we don't...
in
does it-
2017, he also said that he cultivated on it. We don't have imagery that shows live plants on it, but the most recent 2017 aerials show smart pots beginning to be installed on the graded pad. And
Okay.
during the hearing, he admitted to growing on it.
We may hear more in public comment.
So we never, because of the status of this, we never performed an inspection on the site?
Subsequent to the one on April 20th, 2017, no.
No, okay, all right. Okay, any other board questions? All right, since the appellant is not here, I'll open it up for public comments.
Thank you guys for your time. This is my first time ever being in front of any of you. I would say please just grant me a little bit of leniency since I'm new.
That microphone up and speak into it.
There you go. The aerial photos, if you have an iPhone and you look under Google Map, you will find one cultivation, and if you have a Samsung and Android and you look under Google Map at the same address, you will find a second cultivation. I have both photos with me. There has been 2 grows there. I'm speaking for my grandmother who we are getting through a lot of smoke and mirrors right now. We're trying to put an end to it on the property. We were told it was a small medical, she was told it was a small medical grow. My grandmother's here, by the way. She just asked me to speak on her behalf. We just did during a recess, we went up there and took a look, and yeah, there's been a recent pull, and there's stuff going on up there. It just needs to come to a stop. We're not here to protest this. We're actually here in support to the neighbor. They shouldn't have to go through this. No one should have to go through it. I'm not against people and with the things that they want to do and things of that sort. But when it causes issues, it needs to come to a stop. And that's where we're at. Carlos is a Florida resident. He's not even a resident of California. Just thought I'd bring that to your guys' attention. That's why he doesn't have an actual permanent address. His permanent address is where the house is on the site. He's been sleeping on a couch. So there's that. And he's in Florida for a week. We were told that there was a verbal from a board that they could go ahead and grow and cultivate, just a verbal license until their information went through. They were graded, they were perfect, they had all their grading information. They graded 28,000 square foot, built a dry house, all permitted, all okayed through you guys. Again, smoke and mirrors. I'm not putting any words in anyone's mouth, so please don't think that. We're just trying to get to the end of it and clear up any lies or any misunderstandings. I don't know these gentlemen's name. Do I just refer to them as staff, as you guys have? I don't want to just... is there any way, if there was a license produced or anything like that, how would we go about getting it to protect ourselves? To protect the homeowner and protect the land? Because there's nothing stopping the federal people to come in and actually claim it for trafficking and money laundering. Because obviously the sales, when you guys, I don't know if any of you guys hunt, but if you guys go hunt and you give a deer a rifle, it ain't gonna be no fun. And that's where we're at. It's no fun when a rabbit has the gun. And you guys telling someone, hey, you can grow 20 plants and grow 200 plants for personal use. Let's open up some eyes here. You don't need 47 pounds for personal use. But the homeowner, we don't want land taken. We don't want our homes taken. You know, we don't want to be a burden on our community as well. And that's my concern. And the disrespect to people. This man I've never met until today. His wife was ran off the road by people, the traffic. Or he was ran off the road. I apologize. You know, it's a hazard. You know, it could be anybody. We're just trying to make it safe. That's all.
Okay.
Thanks.
It's news to me about this letter because according to the law that he stated at the first hearing is that they only have to report 500 feet from the house. Okay? I'll be honest with you. That's a bunch of malarkey because these are 5-acre parcels on Garamendi X land, okay? And there's no way that these people would have known unless somebody went and talked to them about it. I'm glad to see they are against it as well. Because I'm against it for 2 reasons. There's more traffic going to a dead end. That tells me that something's going on down there that nobody is watching. Okay? Somebody is selling, giving, whatever the case may be, but they're trafficking. The other thing is this gentleman has a business that he is growing marijuana. He drives around with Florida plates and lives in Sacramento, or did live in Sacramento. Now I understand he's living on the couch of the house. But still, why is he running around with Florida plates and not having to be forced to have California plates? He's a businessman in this state. He should have California plates. The Calaveras River is down below his grow. There's got to be some leaching going down there to that water system. It's not my water system, but it's Valley Springs and down below, because I get my water further up the McCullamy. But I think there should be a lot of things that need to be checked on this gentleman and this grow. This is not a good situation, and there are kids that live in that house, and they're being brought up around marijuana. I think this gentleman also told me off the record that the place reeked of marijuana. So that tells me that somebody's using it there. Because you can't get the smell unless you actually smoke it.
Any other public?
To touch on what he said, there is a little bit of leaching from the back river. There was a small pump hose runs off to the back river. I don't know if that's relevant. I don't know if he had a permit for it. I don't know how that works.
Okay.
So.
All right, since the appellant's not here, we'll go back to staff. Any final comments or?
We don't really have anything to add to the appeal hearing. There was a couple of questions were asked. This is sort of the purpose of the review process. The urgency ordinance allowed people that registered to grow to continue to grow until their applications were processed. We're at the point where we determined that this one did not meet the requirements of being denied. He appealed it. This would be the final step in the appeal process before the county to determine if we erred in that, and if the appeal is upheld, then if he hasn't already abated the situation, then the code enforcement team would go out after the site.
And they never did provide a water board application. And if it was finalized?
It appears that he actually got a notice of incomplete for the first NOI and was given a second one on July 11th, 2017. And that appears to be where it stopped.
That's where it stops, okay. So he doesn't even have that. Okay, Supervisor Mills, your light's on?
Yeah, going back to this grading now, is the landowner going to be responsible for pulling a grading permit and correcting the situation, getting it inspected, and
Yes.
so
Grading
monkeys?
occurred, grading permits required, whether the site was abated or not.
So now it's,
Ultimately, erosion control measures and compaction and anything else required of a grading permit is still going to be required.
so this means that they may need to hire an environmental engineer of some type to get the plans necessary to make whatever corrections might be needed to prevent soil erosion and water runoff.
Absolutely.
I got to commend you folks.
Yes.
I hope you know I may quote you.
All right, any other questions? If not, I'll close the hearing and turn back to the board for deliberation, discussion, or a motion. Supervisor
Mr. Chair?
Garamendi.
I'm sorry.
For the record, my family hasn't owned that property for almost 50 years, but I did grow up building some of those houses, or rather playing in the ditch with Tonka choys being made. But I'm ready to make a motion when you're ready, Mr. Chair, to
Okay,
get this
you
thing
want to
moving
make a
along.
motion?
Make a motion to accept the Planning Commission's denial of this appeal.
I will second, Mr. Chair.
A motion, and a second. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to item number 7.
Item 7 is from the Planning Department to conduct a public hearing and adopt a resolution upholding the Planning Commission's denial of the appeal of the Planning Director's denial of commercial medical cannabis registration 2016-554 for John Lowry on APN 014-023-002.
Is the appellant present?
I believe I saw him earlier.
Can we look and see if he's out in the foyer? All right, the appellant is not here. So we will move forward. I'll open the hearing, staff presentation.
All right, this is Miguel Contreras with the Planning Department. I'm here to present Appeal 2016-554 for John Lowry. Good afternoon to the Board of Supervisors. Just real quick, this application was denied for failing the Sheriff Department's background check. Sheriff Department denied him. Planning Director concurred with the denial. And that's basically it.
Okay. Any board questions? Seeing none. Appellant's not here. Is there any public comments, questions? Seeing none. We'll bring it back. Does staff have a summation or rebuttal for any of that?
None.
Seeing none. Board questions. Supervisor Oliveira, your light is on.
Yes, Mr. Chair, seeing no board questions, I would move for...
Let me close
the hearing
first. Hearing is now closed. Now we're open for motion.
Seeing no deliberation by the board, I would move to uphold the Planning Commission's decision to deny this application appeal.
I'll second.
A motion by Oliveira, second by Garamendi. Any other questions? No? Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. We'll take a couple minute break and allow them to clear out.
Let the crowd clear.
For north-south.
All right, moving forward. Final item of the day. Madam Chair, supervisor announcements.
Supervisor announcements. In compliance with AB 1234, chaptered as Government Code Section 53232.3D, board members shall provide brief reports on meetings they attended at the expense of the local agency at the next regular meeting of the legislative body. This report is required to include meetings attended for which there has been expense reimbursement, such as mileage, meals, lodging, etc., but may also, at the board member's discretion, include any other meeting attended by the supervisor on behalf of the county.
We'll start with Supervisor Garamendi today.
All right. I didn't cost taxpayers anything as far as going out of the county. All my meetings were internal. A lot of county staff meetings around OES, planning, buildings. It was a full lead. So I'll just leave it at that, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Supervisor Oliveira.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no reportable events or meetings for the last week.
Supervisor Mills.
Just to report out that we had the Hot Copper Car Show to benefit the Lions and also benefit the community down in Copperopolis. There were 275 vehicles down there. Literally didn't have enough space for all of them. If you imagine a 65 GTO having to park out on the street, that's just how loaded that place was. Attended the Eastside GSA. Ollie from Woodward and Curran is presented the data sets that we're going to be required as part of our moving forward with our plan, our action plan. Fortunately, Calaveras County has a very detailed data set going back to 2004, and I was able to give him a copy of that so that they had a good reference point. Also attended a meeting with the Tuolumne County and our CAO and some other people. I appreciate you being there. I think that the gentleman that was trying to close off a finger of Green Springs on Lake Tulloch found out that maybe Calaveras County does care about what's going on. Because remember, if something happens in Tuolumne County on Lake Tulloch, it does affect Calaveras in some way. And likewise, we affect them. So that helped a lot. The big deal was yesterday, attended the Stanislaus National Forest Tour initiated by Congressman Alfa and Congressman McClintock. And the Forest Service Interim Chief, Vicki Christensen, was there, had a chance to go face-to-face, along with CDF, or CAL FIRE, sorry. CAL FIRE and Ken Pimlott was there, along with Congressman Lamalfa. But there was a lot of people from the logging industry, SPI, some environmental, interested environmental groups like 2Care, et cetera. What was really interesting came out of that is that the U.S. Forest Service is going to begin to deconstruct some of the environmental policies that have been put in place over the years. And their way of explaining it was, we've built all of these policies for so long, but whenever we build a new rule, we never bother to look back at the old rules and take any of them out of the closet. So it's time to clean the closet a little bit. They're wanting to do shared stewardship, and they showed us several sites where they were able to thin the forest, reduce the fuel load, but do so in a way that there was absolutely no cost to the taxpayer. And this is through public-private partnerships, and they are moving forward very quickly to get that done throughout the entire California area. The amount of timber that has been removed now in California is over 100 million board feet this year. They've never achieved that this early in a season since 1986. So it's a long time in coming. During that period in the mid-'80s, there were as high as 350 to 360 million board feet removed. So we are not back to the level that we were taking timber out back in the 80s. And that rung home very clearly. The other thing I wanted to talk to them about was our roads. Our forestry roads have to be in shape to be able to help us with wildfires and being able to access some of these areas like Spicer and Donalds and Beardsley on the Stanislaus. But the primary goal is that to have those good one-on-one conversations with the policymakers and those people in the U.S. Forest Service that really can help us to make a difference. Also, an understanding, as part of the stewardship agreement, means that the counties will, in essence, be given the right to control certain portions of land on the U.S. Forest Service and to be able to make use of the values of the timber that's removed from those lands. It is something that Tuolumne County is into right now, and I think it's a good piece of what that stewardship agreement can do for us in administrating those programs through the Forest Service. So more to come on that. And that's all I have for now. See you at the fair.
Thank you for that report. Supervisor Clapp.
I have nothing to report out on.
Nothing.
And I will be Friday from 2 to 5 at the fair.
Serving in the county booth?
I don't know, sis. I'll be at a place where you just come up and insult supervisors. I get the first seat, you get second. Oh, thanks a lot.
All right, and I have nothing to report as far as any money spent by the county. I did meet with several constituents. Other than that, that's all I have to report.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I do need to make mention of one event I will be attending, and that's going to be the CSAC Legislative Conference tomorrow and Thursday in Sacramento. We'll be attending that with, I believe, CEO Lutz is going to be up there also. We do have meetings with several political organizations and some congressmen and some other business, so we'll be busy for the next few days. Then I will be at the fair.
All right. Well, I will be at the fair, probably at least 2, maybe 3 days out of the 4 that it's open. I will be Sunday in the booth with Kathy Galino from 10 to 3, and then I will jump the frog at the competition between myself and Amanda, the mayor of Angels, and the sheriff and the police chief in our little competition we have going. So, Supervisor, excuse me, CAO Lutz.
I don't have anything, thank you.
Is there a wager?
Thanks, Mike. There's a wager as far as our competition. If I win, she has to buy the CAO, myself, and the Chief Administrative Officer of the city lunch in the county of a restaurant of my choice. If she wins, I have to buy all 4 of us lunch inside the city somewhere of her choice. So,
Supervisor Tofanelli.
You win no matter what happens.
And plus, the Supreme Court ruled that betting on gambling is legal now, so you're all right.
well, he may win, but you know that McDonald's is in the city, so I'll be pushing for that venue. County Council, nothing. Madam Clerk, nothing. Well, with that, we are adjourned.